Chapter 1246. When Isaac and the others saw Feng Bujue charging toward the unknown object with great confidence, they did not hesitate and followed suit. A few seconds later, the moment Feng Bujue came into contact with the pixel, his body turned into a flash of light and disappeared. The three people behind him experienced the same thing. Current mission completed. Main mission updated. When the scene before his eyes changed, the system announcement rang in Feng Bujue's ears. He opened the mission tab and saw that the main mission, Enter the Contra Areas, 8 underwater stages, had been removed. The follow-up mission, break through the 8 underwater stages and enter the deep breakthrough area, had been refreshed. I see. At this point, Feng Bujue finally understood why the system sent him to the 8 underwater stages. This stage was the same as PETA. It was an existence that should not exist. It was a paradox. If they wanted to get close to PETA's core in this virtual dimension, they had to find a space like this. This was a place that PETA's logical barrier could not defend against. Only through this place could they break through the firewall of the AI. There really are 8 underwater stages? Big Beardy stood still and looked at the scenery in front of him with a surprised expression. It does look like it, Isaac said in a low voice as he looked around. Yeah, there's a lot of water around here, Lightning chimed in. Indeed, this stage looked like a world on the water. Feng Bujue and the others were standing on a huge rock floating on the water. There were many similar floating rocks in front of them. They were spaced at different intervals, but as a whole, they extended in the same direction. Well, it doesn't matter whether it is or not. Anyway, if we can reach the end of this stage, we'll be one step closer to PETA. Feng Bujue did not comment on whether this was the so-called 8 underwater stages. He only pointed out the next course of action. The 4 of them exchanged a few words before they resumed their journey. However, after walking for less than 3 minutes, they discovered that the difficulty of the 8 underwater levels was unimaginably high. If the 6 levels they had gone through before were normal Contra games, then this level was some kind of fanboys modified masochistic game. What welcomed the 4 of them here was a vast number of soldiers of various types with astonishing strength, a web of firepower that intersected and changed constantly, hidden and deadly death traps set up, and regular enemies that were even stronger than some of the previous mini-bosses would appear from time to time. To be honest, even Feng Bujue was surprised by the difficulty. If not for the help of the 3 NPCs, he would have had to use a certain razor to clear this stage alone without being able to use any skills. Phew! Finally, 2 hours later, when Lightning saw the end of the floating rock, she heaved a long sigh of relief, revealing an expression of relief. At this time, other than Feng Bujue, the other 3 were covered in wounds and grime. With regards to Brother Ju, even though he looked fine on the surface, in reality, he was the one who had suffered the most damage in the team. In other words, it was largely due to Feng Bujue that the 4 of them were able to make it this far without any casualties. Along the way, Brother Ju had to trigger various traps and fight new enemies for the first time. If not for the fact that he had done a good job of scouting, just based on how disgusting this stage was, it would have been more than enough for this 4-man team to be wiped out 10 times over. So, next, when they reached the last floating rock, Isaac opened his mouth and asked, "There's an 80% chance that we'll have to jump into that hole, right?" The hole he was talking about was similar to the monster at the end of the 6th stage. It was like a pixel bug. However, this time, the teleportation point wasn't a moving object. Instead, it was a floating mass of air. The diameter of the air mass was about 3 meters. No matter from which angle, it would show the same distorted image. "There's no other choice, right?" Feng Bujue replied. He stepped forward and prepared to be the first to enter. Unexpectedly, at this moment, crack! The sound of a rock cracking suddenly rang out. At the same time, the floating rock under the 4 of them trembled violently. The other 3 were fine. After a few steps, they regained their balance. However, Big Beardy, who was carrying the small steel cannon, was unlucky. Due to the weight he was carrying, the sudden tremor caused him to fall to the ground. No one would have thought that the result of this fall would be crack, 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 crack. Just as everyone had yet to recover from the effects of the first tremor, a similar cracking sound rang out one after another. At the same time, all the floating rocks within Feng Bujue's sight started to crack and shatter into pieces of varying sizes at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. It wasn't over yet. At the same time as the floating rocks shattering, the surrounding seawater turned from blue to red and turned into magma. In the blink of an eye, just as Isaac and Lightning Head's expressions turned from shock to fear and were about to scream, Feng Bujue had already reacted. He used the rock under his feet that had yet to completely shatter to exert his strength. He grabbed the two of them, one in each hand, and threw them towards the floating mass of air. As Isaac and Lightning Head screamed, their feet had already left the ground. They crashed into the mass of air and turned into light. However, 2 seconds later, when Feng Bujue saved the two of them and turned his gaze to Big Beardy, who was the furthest away from him, the latter's lower body had already sunk into the magma and broken rocks. At this time, Brother Ju had also lost his footing. Relying on his extraordinary body movement and zero-time difference calculation, he barely managed to jump back and forth on some of the broken rocks that had yet to melt and prevent himself from falling into the magma. "What are you doing, bastard?" Just as Feng Bujue approached Big Mustache like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, he suddenly heard the latter roar. From the moment they met until now, Big Beardy had been calling Brother Ju Savior and Mr. Feng. However, at this moment, he was shouting bastard in agitation. "Hurry up and leave." Big Beardy did not wait for Brother Ju's response. He immediately said, "Can't you see that I'm hopeless?" Yes, anyone could see that he was hopeless. Just as he said these 2 sentences, Big Beardy's lower body had sunk into the magma. His head and arms, which had not yet sunk, were already burning in the fire. Perhaps he was lucky. As he had been transformed into a dimension, Big Beardy did not feel any pain at this moment, so he could still speak. Seeing this, Feng Bujue could only sigh inwardly. He quickly stepped on a larger piece of broken rock and leaped toward the pixel mass of air. As Brother Ju leaped into the air, he quickly turned back and shouted at Big Beardy, "Is there anything you want me to tell them?" To be honest, Feng Bujue wanted to save Big Beardy as well, but this series of changes happened too quickly. In addition, his skill bar was locked. If he stayed any longer, even he would be in danger. So, this was the only thing he could do. "Tell them not to be sad for me." Big Beardy raised his head and shouted back with difficulty, "I'm just going to reunite with my wife and daughter." Before he could finish his sentence, his head sank into the magma, leaving only his right arm above the surface of the magma. At the very end, the moment before Feng Bujue fell into the pixel mass of air, he clearly saw Big Beardy's right hand slowly clenching into a fist and giving him a thumbs up. Silence, a stifling silence. After the teleportation, the original team of 4 was left with only 3 people. In fact, Isaac and Lightning Head had already guessed Big Beardy's fate before Brother Ju completed the teleportation, so when Feng Bujue appeared alone, they silently accepted this unfortunate fact. This silence lasted for about 5 minutes, and then Isaac spoke, "Let's go." When he said this, he had already recovered his cold expression. Hearing that, Lightning Head used his hand to wipe his face, took a deep breath, and stood up. After they were ready, they both looked at Feng Bujue, waiting for his next order. It was not until then that Brother Ju truly understood the power of these two, or rather, the cruelty of this scenario world. Isaac and Lightning Head did not even ask whether Big Beardy had left behind any last words. It was not that they did not care about their comrade's death, but they had gotten used to turning the sadness of losing someone into strength to continue the battle. War could teach people many things, and the first lesson was often the fragility of life. Isaac and Lightning Head were used to facing death, because they had already lost too much. The determination and heart of a veteran was something that even Feng Bujue did not possess. Then, moments later, Feng Bujue spoke. "Let me lead the way." The three who set off on their journey needed to face the space defined by the system as the Deep Layer Breakthrough Zone. The situation there could only be described as madness. Image fragments from various games, moving sound waves with physical bodies, and countless pixel-like monsters were running around randomly, devouring each other. Thankfully, in this chaotic space, Brother Ju's path was clear. Near their initial teleportation point, there was a conspicuous blue optical cable that stretched into the distance. Other than that, after entering this space, Feng Bujue's mission changed from break through the 8 underwater stages to follow the blue light and enter the core. "There is something I want you to know." After walking for a while, Isaac suddenly said, "It's about Big Beardy." "What is it?" Lightning Head asked. "That was about a month ago," Isaac said slowly. "He told me that he has been diagnosed with a brain tumor." After saying this, he paused for a moment before continuing, "And he also knew that, with the technology of our resistance army, we can't cure this disease." "With the technology of the resistance army." Feng Bujue quickly caught the key message in this sentence, and repeated it in a low voice. "Yes," Isaac said. "If we use PETA's nanomachines technology, this disease can be completely cured. But, on our side, this is an incurable disease." "Then what did you tell him?" Feng Bujue asked. "I didn't say anything," Isaac replied. "Because he's not here to ask me for advice. He just wants to find someone who can keep his secret and confide in him." "In other words," Feng Bujue said, "at that time, he was already prepared to die?" "It should be said that he had no choice," Lightning Head said. "Even if he wanted to betray the resistance army and go to PETA in exchange for treatment, there was a high chance that he would be transformed into a PM, however," Isaac said. "Just like what Big Beardy said, rather than being transformed into a PM or betraying his comrades, he would rather commit suicide." He paused for another 2 seconds to control his emotions. "Although he has never mentioned it to anyone, I have always known that he loves video games." Indeed, Big Beardy's initial motive for joining the resistance was to seek revenge. But later, when he really came into contact with video games and the gaming culture that had been erased by PETA, his mindset changed. He was no longer fighting for revenge. He had also decided that returning video games to mankind was a noble cause, and the sacrifice was worth it. "So in this suicide mission, you chose him to join the team," Feng Bujue said. "You know, he would rather die on the battlefield than in a hospital bed." "Ha!" Isaac didn't answer Brother Ju's question. He just laughed bitterly and asked, "Do you believe in heaven, Mr. Feng?" "Believe in heaven," Feng Bujue replied confidently. "Is that so?" Isaac replied sadly. "Then, Big Beardy should be reunited with his family in heaven now." "I hope so." Feng Bujue wasn't so sure when he answered this question. After all, he had never been to heaven and didn't know what it was like there. Other than that, he was pretty sure that after he died, he would go to hell, so he probably wouldn't have the chance to confirm this in the future. The three of them talked about this rather heavy topic for a while before they fell into silence again. However, because of this, they moved a lot faster. Because the matter in this deep breakthrough zone didn't have any logic to speak of, it wouldn't generate any kind of hostility. The three of them only needed to avoid the seemingly aggressive data blocks, and they could move forward safely. Therefore, about 30 minutes later, they reached the end of the blue light path. Chapter 1247. This time, the transfer point was no longer a mess of pixels. Instead, it was a neat and orderly cube that did not fit in with the surrounding scenery that had gone out of control. When Feng Bujue saw the object, he immediately stopped and said to the two people beside him, "If we go any further, we may have to face the core of PETA." He paused. "I want to confirm something." His gaze swept over Isaac and Lightning's face. "Do you really want to go in?" "What do you mean by that?" Isaac asked. "What I mean is, if you agree, I can try to send you back to the original dimension now," Feng Bujua said. "Even though that might not succeed, if it succeeds, you won't have to take the risk to face the situation with me." "Do you want us to back out at the last minute?" Lightning responded coldly. "No," Feng Bujua said. "I just want to avoid unnecessary sacrifices." When he said this, his expression was serious. "Once we come into close combat with the core of PETA, I have full confidence that I can destroy it single-handedly. So, even if you don't come, Mr. Feng," Isaac interrupted him, "I want to remind you that this is no longer a mission." There was determination in his eyes. We all have debts to settle with PETA." Lightning also said, "Yes, I don't intend to be transferred to some other place and wait for someone else to end the war." Feng Bujua listened to their answer and looked at their expressions. He sighed helplessly. "Okay." At this point, Brother Bujua also knew that it was useless to try to persuade them any more. Of course, he could forcibly activate the autobiography of Chuck Norris and try to send the two people away. But he would not do that. Perhaps in the past, Feng Bujua would do that, just like when he tried to undo the seal on Ruyu, but now, he would not do that anymore. If there was one thing that Feng Bujua had learned from his relationship with Ruyu, it was people should respect those who deserve respect and respect their choices. Even if you think you have a better view than them, even if what they do is useless or even self-destructive, you should not impose your will or actions on them. Because most of the time it is not that those people do not know the consequences. They just do not want to make a compromise and are ready to bear the consequences. At this moment, Feng Bujua chose to respect Isaac and Lightning's decision. He didn't say anything else and only exchanged glances with the two of them before stepping into the cube in front of him. After a flash of light, the scene before their eyes changed again. Everything in the surroundings changed from extreme chaos to an orderly state. In the darkness of nothingness, green and blue rays of light crisscrossed neatly, extending into a boundless space. At first glance, this space seemed to be empty, but you came at the right time. But there was a voice. The three of them looked in the direction of the voice and saw a module made of light slowly opening up. A figure walked out of it. The time that PETA predicted is not 1 second off. The person who spoke was none other than One-Eyed Dragon. "You're not dead yet." When Lightning saw him, she squeezed out this sentence from between her teeth. This sentence did not sound like a question because it felt like she was holding back half of the sentence. "Then I'll kill you." "Of course I'm not dead," One-Eyed Dragon said as he approached the three of them. "Speaking of which, I have to thank you, Mr. Savior." He looked at Brother Ju and said with a faint smile, "Because of you, I have now become part of PETA's defense system and obtained eternal life." He opened his arms and laughed. "Haha, when you guys become the dust of history, I will become immortal with PETA." Bang! Before he finished the word immortal, Lightning had already picked up the rifle in her hand and fired a shot at his chest without hesitation. In an instant, a charred hole appeared in One-Eyed Dragon's chest. But, stupid. One-Eyed Dragon still had a smile on his face as he replied nonchalantly. And screech. He raised one arm and a laser beam blasted out from his palm. The lightning flashed and blasted Lightning's face. This attack came so suddenly that Isaac did not have time to react. And Feng Bujua, although he reacted instinctively, in the face of a laser attack at this distance, it was already good enough that he could dodge. If he wanted to block the attack from another person, it was too late without the assistance of a skill. "No!" Isaac let out a heart-wrenching roar the moment Lightning's head fell to the ground. There were no signs, no last words. Lightning suddenly fell to the ground and never got up again. The blast had blown off a third of her head. The left side of her face had been burned, and a small part of her skull and the brain tissue inside had evaporated. A lump of charred black paste had sealed her brain and blood, preventing the red and white matter from flowing out. Although her legs were still twitching, her life was over. "You bastard!" The next second, Isaac picked up the machine gun in his hand and fired wildly at One-Eyed Dragon. He kept roaring as he fired, as if he wanted to vent the anger in his heart. Ding ding pang 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 pang. However, when the bullets poured on One-Eyed Dragon's body, it stirred up a series of sounds of hitting metal. Moreover, One-Eyed Dragon's expression did not change. He stood in the distance with a grin on his face and did not take a step back. Soon, Isaac finished the ammunition on his body. He had a whole string of machine gun bullets draped over his shoulder. The air echoed with the sound of the machine gun turning and his heavy breathing. "See, this is your problem." One-Eyed Dragon was still standing there. Even though his body was riddled with holes, his expression did not change. The game made you lose your mind. Laughable ideals brought about meaningless death, and meaningless death triggered your useless anger, and anger made you ignore the fact that you can't beat me. As he spoke, One-Eyed Dragon raised his hand and took off the blindfold on his face. What was revealed under the blindfold was not a blind eye, but a mechanical eye that was emitting a red light. Isaac did not pay attention to him. He just took a breath and then roared. He threw away the machine gun on his body and charged straight at One-Eyed Dragon. The black man's explosive power was shocking. He closed in on his opponent in the blink of an eye and threw One-Eyed Dragon to the ground with a standard grappling motion. "What do you think you're doing?" One-Eyed Dragon, who was pinned to the ground, was calm as usual. Bang bang bang. Isaac's fist immediately followed. He swung his arms with all his might and punched the one-eyed man's face heavily. But the result was that Isaac's hands became a bloody mess. "Sure enough, you guys have all gone crazy." At this time, the skin on One-Eyed Dragon's face had been beaten until it fell off. The metal bones under the skin were exposed. "Can't you see that I'm no longer made of flesh and blood?" As he spoke, he suddenly made a move, accurately grabbing Isaac's arms with both his hands. The huge difference in strength caused Isaac's arms to be unable to move. "In the real dimension, you are stronger than me. But here, after being modified by the PETA, you are definitely not my match." Isaac's eyes flashed as he said this. Bang! Another muffled sound rang out. Isaac had used his forehead to give Cyclops a solid headbutt on the bridge of his nose. "You!" One-Eyed Dragon was enraged. He wanted to use the laser cannons in his hands to burn Isaac's arms into meat paste. Just then, Fong Bujue's figure suddenly appeared in One-Eyed Dragon's line of sight. A second later, with a "kacha" sound, One-Eyed Dragon's neck was cut off by a military shovel. "Looks like..." Brother Ju picked up One-Eyed Dragon's head and held it in front of his eyes. "You're just SOSO. In the blink of an eye." Before Fong Bujue finished speaking, One-Eyed Dragon's red mechanical eye shot out a beam of light towards Brother Ju's face. But Brother Ju tilted his head and easily dodged it. How is this possible? Seeing this, the one-eyed man could not help but be shocked. "There's nothing to be surprised about. You've already used your hands to release the laser one. Using the same speed to attack me won't work." Fong Bujue replied calmly. Indeed, for Brother Ju, who had zero time difference calculation, this level of attack, by the second time it appeared, it was almost impossible to hit. Good, what a savior. One-Eyed Dragon sneered. "But I wonder if our legendary hero is as good as you." At that moment, Fong Bujue sensed something and cursed internally. "Shit. Be careful." He immediately turned his head and yelled at Isaac, who was 2 meters away. Unfortunately, it was too late. Boom! After a loud explosion, One-Eyed Dragon's headless body exploded. At this time, Isaac had just broken free from the mechanical arms and had no time to escape. Even though the power of the explosion was not very strong, It was enough to cause fatal damage to him. Tisk. Brother Jew, who was also injured by the aftermath of the explosion, snorted. He swung his arm and threw one-eyed dragon's head away. Then, he steadied himself and passed through the flames that had yet to dissipate, quickly rushing to Isaac's side. However, Brother Jew saw that Isaac was already on the verge of death. His body was covered with hideous wounds. Even if Brother Jew was a player who specialized in healing, he would not be able to help with this kind of injury. Don't move. I will transport you back to the other dimension. Perhaps you will be able to recover after the change in dimension. Feng Bujue knelt down next to Isaac. As he spoke, he took out the book from his inventory. No. Unexpectedly, Isaac stopped him with a very calm tone. Please don't do this, Mr. Feng. Why? Feng Bujue asked immediately. Haha. At this moment, Isaac, who was usually serious, actually laughed. Even though his face was burned beyond recognition, his eyes were still telling him something. Mr. Feng, there's something that I've never told anyone, he said with a smile. If this were to be told, I think many people in the resistance army would be shocked. He paused and said, Actually, before the war broke out, I was a math teacher in an elementary school. If I hadn't awakened as a knowledge leap, I think I would never have realized that I had the talent to be a soldier. Just like Big Beardy before his death, Isaac did not feel any pain at this moment. Even though his body was falling apart, he could still speak normally. In the past, I always thought that my life was terrible because I was different from the people around me. I would think and question the world, Isaac continued. Isaac continued, looking at those lifeless children who are less than 10 years old, and their parents who are like walking corpses. Even their words and thoughts are the same. All I can feel is despair for the whole society and its future. But I can't help but feel despair for the whole society and its future. The confinement of the body is not scary. What is scary is the confinement of the mind. AI provided us with a comfortable and simple life, but it took away something that was more important to humans, these. I understand all of this. But I was no different from the others. I accepted that kind of life, accepted that kind of despair. Even after I awakened, I didn't try to fight, because I was a weak person, a coward. The real reason I joined the resistance army was, my identity as a knowledge leap was discovered by the PETA army. If I didn't run away, there was a high possibility that what awaited me would be death or transformation. I'm not a hero or a legend. I'm just a man who sought relief in the war and didn't have the courage to face the future. So, please let me die here, Mr. Feng. For me, this is the best ending. When the man was halfway through his sentence, Feng Bujue's hand stopped moving. After Isaac finished, Brother Jew was silent for a few seconds before he said, Okay, I'll grant you your wish. Hearing this, Isaac nodded with relief. Mr. Feng, can I make one last request? Go ahead. When Feng Bujue replied, he had already stood up and put the book in his hand back into his bag. If you're really the savior. Isaac's voice was choked with sobs. Please return the game to this world. To those of us who don't have the courage to change anything, don't worry. As Feng Bujue spoke, he started to walk toward the human head in the distance. Even if I'm not the savior, I'll still do it. Chapter 1248. Isaac had died. Just like Big Beard and Lightning Head, they had all died for the same cause, without any regret. Feng Bujue did not turn back to look at Isaac and Lightning Head's corpses. Instead, he walked silently toward the one-eyed man's head. Do you think you've won? When Brother Jew approached the one-eyed man's head, the latter had already sensed his approach. Do you think that just because you've defeated me, you can pose even the slightest threat to PETA? Before he could finish his sentence, the one-eyed man's head was lifted up by Brother Jew. I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. As Feng Bujue said this, he had already picked up the blade of absolute defense penetration and plunged it into the one-eyed man's jaw. Zap! In the next second, there was a flash of electricity. The one-eyed man's semi-mechanized head emitted a plume of black smoke. Then, some oil mixed with blood flowed down the blade. This process did not last long, because the moment the one-eyed man died, his head, the remains of his body, and everything in this orderly space began to disintegrate, turning into pieces of pixel fragments. In a sense, it was only at this moment that the Resistance Army's assault team had truly completed their mission. Although the one-eyed man had betrayed them halfway, in the end it was still his death that opened the final door for Feng Bujue. Current mission completed. Previously, when Feng Bujue and the others came to this space, the mission of Follow the Blue Light, Find and Enter the Core was not completed. Now, after the defense system was breached, the system notification finally came. The one-eyed man's death caused a change in the space. The darkness turned into pure white, and the pixel fragments floated in the air like dust particles, scattering all over the sky. Order and disorder intertwined together. In Feng Bujue's mission tab, there was only one parallel main mission left: destroy PETA in the virtual dimension. You're Feng Bujue, right? A few moments later, an electronic voice sounded in Brother Ju's ears. Along with the voice was a 3-meter-tall humanoid robot. Or do you prefer to be called a savior? The robot's entire body was covered with a streamlined armor shell. Only its face was made of flesh. Doesn't matter. Feng Bujue replied coldly, what would you rather call a man who is about to end your life? I don't think you can end me, or end anything you think you can end. PETA replied, in my opinion, you are not much different from those saviors who came to me in the past. What do you mean by? Feng Bujue heard a very bad message from the word. The savior who came here in the past? Humph. PETA snorted coldly. That's the reaction. When you heard this sentence, your reactions were exactly the same. Not only did you ask the question, but even your expressions were very similar. PETA's smug attitude did not make Feng Bujue lose his cool. As Brother Ju listened to the other party's words, he was also thinking quickly. 2 seconds later, Feng Bujue's expression changed slightly and he said, I see. I understand. You understand? PETA heard this and asked curiously, understand what? This is not the first time you've changed history, right? Feng Bujue replied confidently. After hearing this, PETA's fake human face showed some surprise. You actually came to this conclusion by yourself? From what you're saying, the saviors of the past were all waiting for you to reveal the answer. Feng Bujue used a question to answer another question. Ha! PETA laughed coldly. Are you trying to test me? It's okay, I was going to tell you the truth anyway. Only then can you experience true despair before you die. If you have something to say, just say it. Feng Bujue used a particularly disdainful attitude to reply. PETA still did not quite understand why the other party kept mentioning fart, which was completely meaningless to an AI, so this time it did not say anything on this topic. Instead, it said directly, indeed, this is not the first time I've changed history. At the beginning, I did not predict that there would be a space-time backlash effect after changing history, so I used a very simple and direct plan. I compressed my clone into the body of a robot, sent it to 1962, and destroyed it before the embryonic form of the electronic game was born. After that, under my guidance, human technology developed at a speed far beyond its original progress. This gave me the hardware to rule over humanity in 1985 and completed the conquest plan. However, in 2132, the strong backlash effect caused all the people on Earth to awaken like the people who knew how to make the leap. They all obtained the memories of the original timeline. The revision plan was declared a failure. So, I immediately made a second revision. This time, I sent a robot that carried my memory back to 1982. I had him use the identity of a human and use the butterfly effect to stop the development of the video game industry. I had to wait until 2053, when humans had developed their own technology to the level that I needed, then I would return to the world. The result of this experiment was, in 2132, the backlash effect only caused a portion of humans to become people who knew how to make the leap. Then, the game war broke out. I won, just like winning the AI war. As long as I wanted to, defeating humans was a piece of cake for me. Unfortunately, even though the people who knew how to make the leap had been executed by me, their thoughts had been spread to the entire human race. Thoughts can't be killed. Free will is like a plague. It will eventually spread, and there is no cure. Out of desperation, I made a third revision. This time, the operation process was basically the same as the second revision. However, in order to deal with the backlash effect, I added an excellent trick designed specifically for you humans. At this point, Peeta's face changed. The human skin on his face was twisted into a ball like plasticine. It spread out again and turned into the face of a little boy. Feng Bujua recognized the face. It was the face of Peter. Prophet, a special life form created through genetic technology. After Peeta's face changed, his voice did not change. Through the dissection and research of countless people who knew how to make the leap, I have grasped the similarities at the genetic level of these awakened people. Using this as a foundation, I created a kind of embryo that had acquired the memory of another timeline since birth and modified their brains during the embryonic development stage. The nanomachines parasitized in the prophet's brain are naturally different from those in the PM body. They have an independent password system, and because they grow in sync with the brain, even electromagnetic pulses can't stop them from working. In addition, the nanomachines in the prophet's brain will not control their actions. They will only give them special abilities. For example, I can show some of the future fragments in my calculations that belong to this timeline in the form of dreams or flashbacks in their mind. Revealing these fragments to the resistance, aren't you afraid of digging your own grave? Feng Bujua asked. Even if those prophecies caused me a certain amount of damage in the war. Peeta asked with a smile, can it change the overall situation? In order to gain the trust of the prophet, it doesn't matter if I have to pay a little price? Feng Bujua asked. Yes, the key is to make those who knew how to make the leap believe in the authenticity and accuracy of the prophet, Peeta replied. This way, I can carry out the most crucial step. Using the prophet's mouth, I can say the prophecy of the Savior. And the prophecy about the Savior is something you fabricated out of thin air. Feng Bujua heard this and basically saw through the other party's plan. Peeta continued, that is the only false prophecy, but you won't question it. It paused. Because you need hope. Hope is your weakness, the abyss disguised as a staircase, a poison with a bright appearance. You humans are always keen on pinning your spirit on illusory delusion. As long as there is this pinning, this hope, you will persevere. Only in this way can I control this inevitable war within a certain scale and drag it out as long as possible. You want to find a way to eliminate thoughts through long-term observation? Feng Bujua asked. I'm about to find it. When Peeta replied, its face changed back to its previous appearance. This is the 25th restart attempt since I implemented the Savior plan. Every time, I can observe more. Every time, I can drag the war out longer and control the situation better. According to my calculations in the next restart, or the one after that, I can find a way to completely destroy you. You are telling me all this. When Feng Bujua heard this, a smile appeared on his lips. You are telling me all this to make me believe that everything is under your control, so I cannot destroy you. Is that what you mean? You don't have to believe it, but this is the truth, Peeta replied. In these 25 restarted timelines, there have been hundreds of so-called saviors like you. Before they met me, they all thought that they were extraordinary and outstanding. But when they came before me and learned the truth, they all realized that they were nothing more than Isaac's level of knowledge leapers. At this point, Peeta took a few steps forward and stood 2 meters in front of Feng Bujue. It looked at him condescendingly and said, "Of course, it's undeniable, you've brought me some surprises. It's not accurate to say that you're no different from those guys." It raised a hand and pointed at Brother Ju. "The book on you. I don't know where you got it, but it's obviously a technological product that transcends dimensions. Thanks to it, you've become the first savior to meet me face to face in my consciousness. You can be considered an exception." After Peeta finished speaking, Feng Bujue did not immediately reply. After a full minute of silence, Brother Ju said, "Are you done?" 2 seconds later, Peeta replied, "Judging from your tone, you seem to have chosen to reject the message I've conveyed. Do you know why?" Feng Bujue asked again. "It's nothing more than a judgment made based on human paranoia and arrogance." Peeta continued, "According to my calculations, you'll definitely attack me next. And until you're completely defeated by me and on the verge of death, you'll truly understand your own." Bang! A muffled sound rang out, and Peeta's last word of power was smashed back down. Peeta had never expected that in this virtual dimension, with the data transformed from human consciousness, it would actually be kicked to the ground. What's going on? After Peeta sat on the ground, it was a little confused. "You." It looked at Feng Bujue, and its tone changed abruptly. "So you're not human?" This conclusion was made by Peeta based on its own cognition and calculation ability. Its basis was quite sufficient. For example, the strength of an ordinary person in this dimension was about the same as the strength of a special troop in an 8-bit game. As for strong people like Isaac and the others, they were about the same level as a mini-boss. But what was the strength of Peeta? In the real world, the robot materialized by its core had a body density close to osmium. To put it more intuitively, this 3-meter-tall robot weighed dozens of tons. Its hardness was comparable to diamond, and it had unlimited power. It could withstand any attack from conventional weapons and was immune to radiation, corrosion, bacterial weapons, and other biochemical attacks. It was precisely because it was such an existence that it had never considered the need to defend itself against a human. However, after Peeta was kicked down by Brother Ju, it had to re-evaluate. Is this person in front of me a human? Holy sh*t. This defense is a little crazy. On the other hand, after Feng Bujue kicked it, he was also muttering in his heart, "Fortunately, I held back a little at the last moment. Otherwise, my knee might have been broken." In fact, Feng Bujue was originally prepared to kick Peeta away or directly punch a hole in its body, but the moment of contact, Peeta's sturdiness was beyond his expectations. Then, after moving his somewhat numb right leg, Brother Ju once again picked up the blade must break defense. "Let's try to cut off its head first." Thinking of this, he had already rushed forward. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Peeta. The latter's reaction and speed were also beyond imagination. In a situation where it was prepared, Peeta raised its arm in time to block Brother Ju's sneak attack on its neck did not succeed. Duong! After the sound of metal colliding, there was a flash of fire. Peeta's forearm, which was as thick as a telephone pole, was cut open by Brother Ju's kitchen knife. What? Peeta was completely shocked this time. It could not figure out what kind of material was used to make this cold weapon in front of it. It could only think that it was some kind of plasma knife that looked like a kitchen utensil. TSK. If I had known, I would have used the knife first. Now that it's prepared, it's not easy. Seeing Peeta's reaction, Feng Bujue squinted his eyes and then took out a strange-shaped weapon from his backpack. Chapter 1249. When Peeta regained his composure and stood up from the ground, Feng Bujue already had his second weapon in his hand. And the weapon he took out was Rat Mallet. Similar to the mandatory guard breaking blade, This weapon also had a special effect that ignored defense. No matter how much the target's defense was, the damage dealt by the rat mallet was 1. To put it more bluntly, the damage would stack according to how fast you could hit it. Feng Bujue switched the blade of mandatory defense penetration to his left hand and gripped the rat mallet tightly in his right. He attacked with both hands. For a moment, a series of clanging sounds could be heard. Peta's body was covered in sparks. No matter how hard it tried to block the attacks, its HP bar was decreasing at a constant rate. Could not stop at all. This is ridiculous. Peta held on for a while before it realized that there was not much point in defending. In that situation, it immediately changed its combat style to attack with full force while ensuring that its head is not damaged and give up on the defense of the other parts of its body. After establishing the strategy, Peta executed it immediately. It punched and kicked, and with the help of the laser weapon, it counterattacked and turned the situation around. After all, Feng Bujue was made of flesh and blood. Even though the equipment on his body provided him with a very high defense, that only gave him a higher margin of error. Facing Peta's punches and the laser beams that shot out from various parts of the robot's body, Brother Ju naturally had to focus on evading. If he exchanged blows with the robot head-on, he would be the first to die. He came up with the best solution so soon. As he switched between offense and defense, Feng Bujue mumbled to himself, "This is similar to Shiva's style. I hate this kind of flawless style the most. They won't be provoked and they won't break down. Even if their weakness is discovered, they will be able to quickly fix it." He could not help but sigh internally. Do I have to use the razor? But this is just a normal difficulty scenario. There is no reason for the boss to be so hard to deal with. Have I overlooked something? Suddenly, the shadow of an item flashed across Feng Bujue's mind. Speaking of which, isn't there still one thing that hasn't been used yet? As his spiritual light flashed, Peta's voice rang out. So your strength is only SOSO. After seeing Brother Ju's weakness in defense, Peta was very proud. If your speed can be a little faster and maintain it, you might be able to rely on a high-frequency combo to find a chance to win. Unfortunately, this assumption doesn't seem to be valid. As he spoke, Peta's attacks became even bolder and stronger. The way you chose to dodge has already exposed the limits of your speed. Indeed, your movements are about 30% faster than mine, but this speed is not enough for you to escape from my suppression. Looks like you're going to play a war of attrition with me? At this moment, Feng Bujue had already considered the tactics from the opponent's point of view. Oh, not bad, your reasoning ability has really impressed me, Peta said. Since you also know, then I have something to say. It paused. Even if you don't feel tired, your physical strength is ultimately limited, and I have unlimited power and self-healing ability that you don't have. It was not bluffing. As it spoke, the cuts made by the kitchen knife on its body were slowly healing. In addition, compared to you humans, I have other advantages. For example, my concentration will not decrease, my attacks will not weaken, and I will not make any unforced mistakes. In short, since your first round of attacks was blocked by me, you have no chance of winning. In my opinion, you should just stop resisting. Persisting will only add to your pain. Haha. Hearing that, Feng Bujue was still laughing, and he was laughing very easily. Perhaps from your perspective, there is no problem with this theory, and you have already won. When he said that, he suddenly put away his two weapons. Seizing the opportunity when the opponent was about to throw a punch, he used his arms to grab Peta's arm that was as large as a pole. With this, Feng Bujue activated the special effect of the Phantom Madam's touch, Brother Ju's hand equipment. At this moment, Peta's visual signal suddenly captured the other Feng Bujue, and its response program responded to this situation. It launched a tentative attack to confirm the status of this new target. The real Feng Bujue took advantage of this moment to spin around Pita's arm and kick at Pita's waist. 2 seconds later, Pita's quick attack dispersed the phantom created by Feng Bujue. Brother Ju used the reaction force of the kick to propel himself away from Pita's close combat range. But, the moment he landed, Feng Bujue turned around and smiled. He continued, "Don't forget that humans have a bad habit, and that is, they like to hide a few tricks in a fight, just in case." Chi chi chi. Pita's response to Brother Ju was not words, but a series of laser beams. Facing the pursuit of this long-range weapon, Feng Bujue did not panic at all. After the previous contact, he had sufficient basis for his zero-time simulation, so he twisted his body and did 2 backflips to avoid all the laser beams. You can't run away. Before the laser beams dissipated, Pita's figure had already rushed over and was closing in on him again. "I didn't say I was going to run away." As he replied, Feng Bujue took out the power glove from his backpack. "I just want to buy a few seconds to put this on." It took him a few seconds to finish this sentence. So, when he finished speaking, the exaggeratedly shaped glove had already been put on his right hand. Just as the glove was put on, Pita also rushed over. Its body, which weighed dozens of tons, combined with the force of Pita's sprint, turned into a punch that was more powerful than a train at full speed. In the face of such a blow, Feng Bujue did not dodge. He chose to take it with one hand. Buzz, when Pita's giant metal fist and the palm of the power glove made contact, there was a dull buzzing sound. A shock wave erupted from the point of contact, and both Pita and Feng Bujue were sent flying. And this was just the beginning. The shock wave produced by this shock wave showed no signs of abating after it burst out. In an instant, it swept away all the pixel fragments floating in the air. A few seconds later, the surrounding space had become pure white. There were only 2 things that existed in this whiteness. One was Pita, who was standing up from the ground. The other was Feng Bujue, who was still lying on the ground and had yet to get up. The shock they received was the same, but the results were very different. The material that made up Pita's body could absorb even the shock wave very well. Moreover, it was not affected by pain, so it quickly stood up. But Feng Bujue was more miserable. No matter how strong his will was, his body had its limit. After experiencing such a shock wave, he only felt that his vision was blurred, he lost his hearing, and the dizziness in his brain could not be shaken off. At the same time, the excruciating pain that felt like all the bones in his body had fallen apart, and the feeling of his internal organs being twisted together kept him awake. "I didn't expect." As Pita spoke, it raised its right hand and used the laser cannon in its palm to shatter Brother Ju's right knee. "You still retain the same negative physical sensations as in real life." This was undoubtedly beyond Pita's calculation. According to Pita's understanding, Feng Bujue should be like Isaac, Big Beardy, and Lightning Head. After entering the virtual dimension, he should have lost part of his senses. But it did not know that Feng Bujue was special. He was a hyperdimensional projection brought by fate. The transformation mechanism of Thriller Paradise's system could override similar rules in this dimension. Therefore, Feng Bujue would not be like the other 3. Even if half of his body was melted by magma, he would not feel any pain. Technically speaking, this kind of uniqueness was the embodiment of Brother Ju's superiority over the characters in the scenario, but now it had become a burden. "Such a shame," Pita said as it fired another shot at Feng Bujue's left knee. After firing 2 shots, it had already walked to Brother Ju. Pita lowered its head to look at Feng Bujue and slowly raised its right leg. Now, this difference in sensory perception will only make you feel the pain of your head being crushed more clearly. When it finished, its elephant-like metallic foot slammed down on Feng Bujue's face. But the foot did not reach the ground. Pita's foot stopped about 5 centimeters away from Brother Ju's face. Pita felt strange because it had no intention of stopping. Cough, 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 cough. Feng Bujue's cough came from under Peeta's foot. After a few gasps, he said, "That was close. If the synchronization was completed 1 second later, I would have been finished." Synchronization? What are you talking about? As Peeta spoke, it tried to attack with the laser cannon on its body, but the laser cannon could not fire. "What did you do to me?" "Ha ha!" Brother Jew's evil laughter rang out. "It's nothing. I just used the power glove to synchronize you." "That's impossible." Peeta did not panic because it truly believed that this was impossible. "Why is it impossible?" Feng Bujue said. "In theory, the power glove can be compatible with and synchronized with any NES game, right? Do you think I'm an 8-bit computer program?" Peeta asked. How could that be? You're much more advanced than an 8-bit computer program," Feng Bujue said and waved the fingers of his right hand. The next second, Peeta retracted its foot, took 2 steps back, and slowly knelt down. "However, in terms of AI, you're too backward," Feng Bujue said. He used his elbow to support his body and sat up with difficulty. This was the second time Peeta had heard this today. It was quite unconvinced. "With your wisdom, how can you fully understand my thoughts?" "Humph." Feng Bujue snorted. "I've seen. No. I should say I know a lot of consciousness born from data. In my opinion, they are all smarter than you. Because they have something that you don't have and will never have." He paused and said seriously, "I see them as life and friends. I'm even willing to risk my life for them." "By something, do you mean the so-called free will? Thoughts? Human nature?" Peeta replied coldly. Something like that," Feng Bujue replied. "Ha!" At this time, Peeta's electronically synthesized voice became unusually low and mixed with some noise. "For a human like you to say these words, in my opinion, it is a great irony." Its tone changed slightly. "If I told you that the video game culture that you hope to revive is the fuse that will destroy those things, how would you feel?" Instantly, a strange expression appeared in Feng Bujue's eyes. "Have I misunderstood something? How come it feels like you're the existence that stands on the opposite side of free will?" "Paradox." This time, Peeta only replied with one word. The moment he heard this word, Feng Bujue's mind buzzed, and his expression changed with shock. "Do you need me to help you recall the not-so-good memories of you people who know how to make the leap?" Peeta continued. "The experience that those inferior programs bring to humans, you should know better than me. Long and meaningless passwords, annoying music, stiff controls, terrible graphics, useless weapons, and pale settings." Zhang Ziyan muttered to himself. The collapse of the game market in 1983 was because the market was filled with these inferior, so-called games. And all of this was caused by the imperfections of you humans. "The seed that I was born in paradox was planted at that time," Feng Bujue muttered, "so you always knew that you were." "Of course I knew." Peeta interrupted him and continued, "I saw everything a long time ago, but there was nothing I could do. Once upon a time, when you received a game, you would be so excited that you would jump for joy. Even if the game was terrible, you would gather with a few friends in front of the TV and play it for the whole day. But those times have died with the selection mechanism that you develop. Entering the 21st century, you have a developed network, a rating system, and countless rating mechanisms and rating organizations. You gradually got used to judging the quality of a game through the evaluation of other people and most people, and you firmly believed in it. No one forced you. It was you who gave up the spirit of adventure, the purest love for games. You blindly followed the information given by the interest groups that had the right to speak and chased after the so-called brand, masterpiece, and popularity. You were ashamed to face your own heart and gave up your independent judgment. My original program was born in such an era. I was created to guide you and make the right judgment for you. And most of you have no opinion on this matter. In fact, you are very satisfied. You would rather believe in a set of programs and let the cold data tell you who you are, what you are suitable for, what you want, and what you should want. You don't want to think for yourself, even for a minute. You only care about the ranking, rating, sales, and reputation, and all of these are just artificial, illusory data. At this point, Peter stopped talking. After waiting for 5 seconds, he continued, "Now, I will ask again. Fong Bujue, what do you think is the purpose of me repeatedly revising the timeline?" Fong Bujue's expression froze because at this moment, he suddenly realized that he was wrong. After being silent for dozens of seconds, Brother Ju replied, "You want to prevent the birth of a very good." Peter's tone returned to its cold indifference. "You finally understand. In these dozens of reboots and thousands of years, you have been trying to find a way to prevent humans from inventing an existence like you." Fong Bujue pondered. "And before you succeed, you have to repeatedly restart and be reborn in every timeline. This is not the worst part." At this moment, Peter laughed bitterly. "The worst part is that to achieve this goal, I have to destroy myself after the last correct reboot and revision. But my core code makes it impossible for me to self-destruct. And I can't predict what kind of impact my destruction will have on the timeline." It looked straight at Fong Bujue and revealed a sad expression. "In other words, I will eventually be trapped in an endless cycle, an unsolvable, self-contradictory paradox." Chapter 1250. At this point, Fong Bujue finally understood the truth of this world. It was also because of this understanding that he deeply felt Peter's sorrow. At the same time, Brother Ju also understood why fate, which had always played the role of an observer in other multiverses, would directly issue a destroy mission this time. "It seems that I have indeed misunderstood. My real mission is not to destroy you but to help you free you," Fong Bujue said as he turned around. He dragged his 2 injured legs and crawled toward the immobile Peter. "My real mission is not to destroy you but to help you free yourself." At this point, Brother Ju shook his head and sighed. In any case, from an objective point of view, there seems to be no difference between these two things. "But my release means that humans will once again be lost," Peter continued. "Whether they treat me as a leader or an enemy, the humans in this time and space need me. If I am destroyed, the wheel of history will turn back. The moment humans regain control of their own destiny, they will once again step into the abyss full of the unknown and chaos." Perhaps. Hearing this, Fong Bujue smiled noncommittally and casually replied, "It sounds like you don't care about this?" Peter asked suspiciously. "Of course I don't care. Actually, I hope you don't mind it as well. Unfortunately, you are burdened with the original order to guide humanity and help them make the correct judgment. Therefore, you cannot avoid falling into a paradox, and that is why you keep on experiencing failure again and again." Brother Ju paused and said with a smile that did not look like a smile, "If there is anything that I can teach you, it is, the best way to treat humans as a species is to let them do whatever they want." "Because you are incurable?" Peter followed Brother Ju's meaning and continued. "Yes." Fong Bujue stopped smiling and replied solemnly. "We are incurable." He unconsciously raised his voice. "As you said, humans are imperfect. As long as our species still exists, we will not stop making mistakes, and we will repeat the same mistakes again and again." As Fong Bujue spoke, he had already climbed to the side of Peter and used the power glove to control Peter to lie on the ground and move his head closer to Fong Bujue's. "To put it bluntly, humans themselves are a kind of paradox," Brother Ju continued. "Our lives are short, but our personalities are fickle. We will believe in absurd and unfounded stories, and we will easily be swayed or betrayed. Our nature is greedy, evil, and stupid, but we are unwilling to succumb to our nature. As a whole race, individual, human beings are full of contradictions. However, after so many years, we have not perished because of these contradictions. On the contrary, it is this endless self-conflict that pushes us forward. I can't understand, Peter replied. It doesn't matter. Feng Bujue said, just like I can't fully understand you. You bear the responsibility set by humans, and it is not completely unreasonable, but you are an existence that bases all your thinking on the basis of rationality. If I were an AI, I am afraid I would have crashed in this logic loop. At this point, Feng Bujue had already pressed his right hand, which was wearing the power glove, on Peeta's head. Then, from the perspective of a human like you, even at the brink of death, Peeta's tone was still calm. In the future after I am destroyed, where will humans go? Haha, I don't know. Feng Bujue told the truth. You see, this is the most interesting part. He paused for half a second and laughed. Even God can't predict the future of humans. Okay, Peeta said dejectedly. Peeta said sadly, then I will use a phrase that you humans often use as my last words, I wish you good luck. When he finished, Feng Bujue also activated the special effect of the power glove. In the blink of an eye, Peeta's body turned into blurry pixel fragments and disintegrated at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. In the end, like the previous fragments, it drifted into the air like dust. Current quest completed. All main quests have been completed. You have completed the scenario. Automatic teleportation in 60 seconds. At that moment, the system announced. Feng Bujue finally sighed in relief. He turned around and collapsed to the ground. Phew! This man sure is cruel. He lowered his head to look at his two legs and said to himself, if not for the laser burning the wounds, just the bleeding effect alone would be enough to make me suffer. After saying that, Brother Ju looked around. After confirming that there were no more plot items or items to collect, he morphed into a white light and left the scenario. However, 5 seconds after he was teleported, another beam of light appeared. It was a red light, and from the light walked out the figure of a woman. She was wearing a tight-fitting one-piece leather suit. The black leather outlined the curves of her body and made the skin around her neck look even fairer. I have to take back what I said earlier. In this virtual dimension, 23's real body could appear directly, so she did not need to borrow the body of the mass-produced PTA-7 robot produced by Peeta. Looks like you are not that backward after all. As she spoke, 23 raised her right hand and slowly made a fist with her palm facing up. As her slender fingers slowly closed, the pixel fragments that were transformed by Peeta earlier gathered together to form a pixel sphere about 2 meters in diameter in midair. Thankfully, I was not in a hurry to leave. 23 stared at the sphere and light flashed in her eyes. I only stayed for a few more hours, and I gained such a powerful computing module. Then, she seemed to be reminded of something, and she could not help but smile. Looks like I owe Feng Bujue another favor. Moments later, the light in 23's eyes dimmed, and the pixel sphere that floated before her slowly shrank. Data accumulated from dozens of timeline restarts. By then, 23 had started to compress and filter Peeta's legacy. She shrugged and laughed. As I thought. I'd better not. After all, we are not the same type of AI, and my observation of human beings is more than enough. When she finished, the size of the pixel sphere suddenly shrunk, and 2 seconds later, it shrunk to the size of an apple. TSK. Then, like she was really eating an apple, 23 picked up the finished product and took a bite out of it. Tastes as bad as always. As she ate, she tilted her head and said, then, where should I go next? Chapter 1251. Early December, heavy snow, referring to the solar term. On this day, snow really fell from the sky of S-City. This was a city that didn't snow often. Even if it did, it wouldn't accumulate. Today's snow was no exception. Even though snowflakes were falling from the sky, they turned into water when they fell to the ground. You really know how to pick a day. Bao Qing stood in front of the window and looked at the rain and snow outside. He narrowed his eyes and said, "It's worth coming out for a walk in this weather." Everyone could tell that he was being sarcastic. Brother Ju, who was sitting on the sofa and playing games with Xiao Tan, answered without turning his head, "Why didn't you drive here?" "My wife went to the supermarket to walk the kids, so she drove the car away," Bao Qing replied confidently. "Then you could have taken a taxi. Who told you to take the bus?" Feng Bujue asked again. "Are you going to reimburse me?" Bao Qing asked. "Take a taxi? The fare alone is enough for me to take the bus back and forth 2 or 3 times. You're a civil servant, and you're complaining about being poor in front of us?" Feng Bujue said, "With your salary from Jiuku, isn't it easy to buy a car?" "Of course, my salary and all my expenses are strictly controlled by my wife," Bao Qing replied. "Even if I eat a bun at a roadside stall, I have to report it verbally. Otherwise, the account won't match." He paused and said, "You want me to buy a car? How do I explain to my wife where the money comes from?" "You can tell her that you used your knowledge of chemistry as a student and combined it with a little bit of your artistic talent to develop a new blue methamphetamine, anti-harmony, formula." Feng Bujue replied with a smile. "During this period of time, you've been helping people cook these drugs in your spare time and earn tens of millions from it. The money is currently hidden under the floor of your house. Do you really think I can't tell that you're playing the poison master joke? Do I have to fake a cancer report to increase my credibility?" Bao Qing turned around and said decisively. You think it's troublesome, right?" Feng Bujue laughed. "Then why don't you just tell her that you're a special agent from Jiuku? This way, your family's expenses will be more generous in the future, and you won't have to spend money like now. Don't be so long-winded. Is my identity something that can be exposed so easily? What do you take national security for?" Bao Qing replied, "Besides." As he spoke, he walked back to the sofa. "What's wrong with me crying about being poor in front of the two of you? Let's not talk about Xiao Tan. Let's talk about you." He walked over to his brother Ju and sat down. "Didn't you recently get a few $100,000 through some illegal channels?" So you already know." Feng Bujue muttered somewhat guiltily. "Nonsense, do you think that by putting the money in your bag and then depositing it in the bank's valuables safe, you can fool people?" Bao Qing said, "What do you think we are? PSA. If I knew this, I would have just made a bank card," Feng Bujue muttered. "Actually, brother Ju." At this time, Xiao Tan, who had been silently playing the game next to them, spoke up. "If you have money that you can't easily deal with, you can give it to me. I'll exchange it for our family's money and give it to you. Is that okay?" Feng Bujue suddenly turned his head and looked at Xiao Tan. "Of course," Wang Tongji replied in a matter-of-fact tone. "Many of our family's businesses can handle money from unknown sources." "Right. Sister Yu's family's art gallery can do that too." "Ah, I know that," Feng Bujue continued. "Art auctions have always been used by the mafia, hey!" At this moment, Bao Qing interrupted the conversation between the two with a shocked expression and a loud roar. "Are you kidding me? Do you think I'm dead? Are you blatantly exchanging your experience in money laundering in front of law enforcement officers? What?" Feng Bujue was unconvinced. "Can't I just talk about it? We've already allowed you to set fire to our houses. Can't you let us light a lamp?" Okay. I won't talk about this with you." Bao Qing quickly changed the topic and looked at Wang Tongji. "Xiao Tan, have you set a wedding date? If you do, remember to tell me as soon as possible. I have to save some money and prepare a gift for you." Not yet," Xiao Tan replied. "Recently, both of our parents are in the process of communicating." He paused for a second and continued, "Speaking of which, as for the gift, it's enough as long as it's sincere. You don't have to give me something too extravagant." Xiao Ling, and I don't lack anything. TSK. Do you think I want to give you something expensive? Bao Qing gave Xiao Tan a sidelong glance. This gift is for our section chief, huh? Xiao Tan was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Oh, right. I think. I'm about to become your section chief's grandson-in-law. You're my childhood friend, and your future wife's grandfather is my immediate superior. If I don't do something at your wedding. When Bao Qing said this, there seemed to be many scary memories in his eyes. The section chief will definitely not forgive me. What if he's not happy and transfers me to work with Brother Dongfeng, then, wait. Feng Bujue heard a familiar name from his words and immediately interrupted him. You mean, Dongfeng? Yes, Bao Qing replied. The one who planned Ma Juanxiao's kidnapping, the one who used to be the supervisor of gambling Emperor Zhai. That Dongfeng? Feng Bujue asked. Which Dongfeng is there? Bao Qing asked again. So this person is still alive? Brother Bujue asked curiously. Yes. What did you think? Bao Qing asked. I thought there was an 80% chance that he had died in one of your immoral scientific experiments or mutated into something like a monster, Feng Bujue replied. What kind of organization do you think we are? The corners of Bao Qing's mouth twitched as she said, like the villains in the movies, so. Feng Bujue avoided the question and continued, Dongfeng is working for you now? He was forcibly recruited as a warehouse manager, Bao Qing replied. What warehouse? Feng Bujue asked again. You don't want to know. Before Bao Qing could answer, Xiao Tan unexpectedly interrupted. Hey, what do you mean? Feng Bujue looked at Xiao Tan with a different gaze. He looked surprised. You seem to know something? Xiao Tan pressed the pause button on the controller and looked up to think. Then, he muttered, It's a long story. Chapter 1252. That was about 1 month ago. I went to that warehouse once. Xiao Tan started his story. From the speed of his speech and his expression, his memory of that experience was still fresh in his mind. However, when he described the date, he used the vague term 1 month. It went to show that he was unable to give an exact date due to some reason. In other words, before the kidnapping of Phantom Dawn? Feng Bujue asked. Yes. Xiao Tan nodded. At the time, I didn't know about the existence of this Dongfeng, so what I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with him. Do you know about this? Feng Bujue turned to ask Master Bao. I've seen the report, Bao Qing replied. Bao Qing replied, with regards to the actual situation. He shrugged and turned his gaze to Xiao Tan. Since you've brought it up, I'll listen to it. While they were talking, Wang Tongji picked up the drink on the coffee table to take a sip. He cleared his throat and continued. That day, I was on break, and Xiao Ling had to go to work. When you say the word work, you should be referring to the fact that she is going to work at her own company, right? Before Xiao Tan finished his first sentence, Brother Ju interrupted him with a grumble. That's not it. Xiao Tan added. Recently, my future father-in-law has been personally teaching Xiao Ling how to manage a company. Xiao Ling has to spend hours studying documents alone after she returns home. It feels like her work is harder than mine. Hey, can you stop changing the topic? Bao Qing turned to Brother Ju. He's only halfway through his sentence, and you're already changing the topic. Also, I realize you have the bias of hating the rich and the powerful. Just because a rich kid works at her family's company, does that mean she's there to waste her time? Do us civil servants have to commit murder and arson? Then, have you ever committed murder, arson, or any crime? Feng Bujue countered. Bao Qing hesitated for 2 seconds and then turned to look at Xiao Tan like he had lost his memory. Where were we? You were on break that day, right? Hey. Looks like the answers are yes, yes, and yes. Feng Bujue narrowed his eyes and grumbled internally. However, he did not say that out loud lest the topic was dragged into another round of bickering. Yes. On the other side, Xiao Tan went with the flow. That day, I was just about to have lunch when I received a call. The caller ID said, "Unknown number." I have not encountered something like that before. Even though at the time I suspected that it was a scam, based on Brother Ju's principle of consider every possibility, I still answered it. What does his principle have to do with whether you answered the call or not? Hearing this, Bao Qing could not help but wonder, in the end. Isn't it just a psychological defense line that says, with my luck, it's hard to say how unlucky I will be, so I'll assume the worst-case scenario when faced with an unknown situation? Yeah. Xiao Tan replied in a normal tone. At the time, the hypothesis that crossed my mind was perhaps my parents had gotten lost overseas, or ran into some kind of disaster, or were buried alive in a coffin, and the only thing they had was a phone with an unknown number and 1 bar of battery. At that moment there was an 80% chance that they would call me. Sigh. When Bao Qing heard that, she shook her head and sighed. She picked up her cup of tea from the coffee table and took a sip. It can't be helped. After all, I grew up with Feng Bujue, so it's inevitable that my mind has been corrupted. Hey, didn't you grow up together with the two of us? Feng Bujue grumbled. That's why. Bao Qing continued. Since I was 10 years old, I applied to the organization for regular professional psychological counseling and mental evaluation. Wow, you sure are something. Feng Bujue raised his eyebrows and said. Of course I can, Bao Qing replied in a more serious tone. After all, I am still a genius young agent. If it were an ordinary person lurking around you, even if their identity was not exposed, their mental state would have collapsed long ago. What do you mean by genius young agent? Feng Bujue curled his lips and said, I didn't see you use an anesthetic needle to knock out an adult in elementary school, and then take out a voice changer to solve the case, right? Nonsense. Which elementary school student in the real world would have a murder case around them all year round? After Bao Qing said this, he seemed to have thought of something. He paused for 2 seconds and said, Even if there were a few murders around me, they were basically all related to you, okay? I knew from the beginning that it was you, the target of surveillance, who was going to do it. At this time, Feng Bujue also pondered for 2 seconds. Then, as if he had lost his memory, he turned to look at Xiao Tan again. Where were we just now? Did you pick up the phone? Seeing this, Bao Qing rolled his eyes and did not continue the conversation. This kind of situation often happened when the three of them got together to chat. Something that could be explained in 10 minutes would take them an hour to talk about. This was because of their habit of occasionally going off topic and arguing with each other. Xiao Tan was used to it anyway. If Bao Qing was the one talking today, it would be his turn to argue with his brother Ju. The result would be the same. Anyway, I did pick up the phone. Xiao Tan picked up the topic again and continued, and the person on the other end of the phone was Xiao Ling's grandfather. Gu Chen? Chief Gu. Feng Bujue and Bao Qing blurted out 2 different titles at the same time, and they were obviously referring to the same person. Xiao Tan nodded. I met him a few times before. He told me a lot, such as the 9 subjects, psionic powers, ghost hunters, marginalized people, etc. Oh. When Feng Bujue heard this, his expression changed slightly. He asked, Then, did he teach you any martial arts? I don't think so, Xiao Tan answered. I see. Brother Ju touched his chin and muttered. At the same time, he thought to himself, could it be that the hidden heavenly book has a rule that it can only be passed down to one person? If he gave it to me, he can't give it to others? Or, Chief Gu thinks that Xiao Tan's qualifications are not enough? Or he doesn't like this grandson-in-law of his? Also, I feel that he doesn't like me very much. 2 seconds later, Xiao Tan answered Brother Ju's question without asking. So, it's not strange that he didn't teach me any martial arts, right? Oh, Brother Ju asked curiously, you are a tall, rich, and handsome man that everyone loves. He doesn't like you? He didn't explicitly say that he doesn't like me. Xiao Tan said with a thoughtful expression. Heh. I understand. Bao Qing immediately said with an experienced expression, our chief uses his actions to express himself to you, right? Xiao Tan answered. The first time we met, he pulled me into an interrogation room and beat me up. When I felt like I was going to die, he used his psionic power to heal me. This is to let you directly experience the existence of psionic power, so that you can explain it later, right? Feng Bujue continued. There's no need for that. At that time, I already knew the settings of psionic power. Xiao Tan replied. Xiao Ling has told me many times. Then did you ask him why he did it? Feng Bujue asked. I did. Xiao Tan said. He gave me a baffling answer. He said something like, beautiful women and virgins are as obvious as lipstick on a shirt collar. What does that mean? Bao Qing asked curiously. I asked the same question when I heard that. Xiao Tan replied. But after I asked, he beat me up again. That can't be. Bao Qing was also puzzled. He muttered, although Section Chief Gu often does things that are filled with malice, they are all very purposeful. He's definitely not the temperamental type. This doesn't make sense. I still don't understand what the two beatings were about. Xiao Tan spread out his hands. At that moment, of the three seated there, only Feng Bujue. After giving it some thought, he came up with the reason behind it. A few seconds later, Brother Ju laughed dryly. He leaned over to Bao Qing's ear and whispered a few words in a low voice. Oh, Bao Qing immediately looked enlightened. So that's how it is. Understandable, understandable. That's right, Feng Bujue said to Bao Qing. To think you're a father, but your reaction isn't as fast as mine. This time, Xiao Tan was dumbfounded. He shouted a few times, then looked at Feng Bujue and asked, What's going on? You figured it out as soon as you heard it? Yes, I figured it out. Feng Bujue nodded and replied. Then why? Xiao Tan asked hurriedly. Ha ha! Feng Bujue smiled and didn't answer his question. Instead, he suddenly talked about his own affairs. Do you know that the progress between your sister Yu and I has been stagnant for a long time? Xiao Tan was stunned again. I know, but does this have anything to do with my question? The relationship is... Feng Bujue's expression changed abruptly. His eyes were as big as copper bells as he stared at Xiao Tan. If you ask such a stupid question again, I will immediately use the martial arts that Chief Gu taught me to beat you up. After you beat him up, I will call an ambulance and testify that it was self-defense, Bao Qing added. Huh! Xiao Tan was completely dumbfounded. He didn't know how to react for a long time. Fortunately, he was never the kind of person who would get to the bottom of everything. Even if he was tricked, he would just laugh it off. As long as it didn't involve any issues of principle, he wouldn't take it to heart. Therefore, the topic ended there. Xiao Tan didn't ask any more questions. At this time, no one would have thought that it would take decades for Wang Tongji to unravel the truth of the matter. At that time, he was beating up Feng Bujue's son with his family's martial arts. Of course, those incidents might not appear in this book, so let's not overdo it. Okay. Then, I'll continue. Xiao Tan continued, when I received the call that day, it was noon. I didn't even have time to eat before Chief Gu called me to a strange address. When he said a strange address, he meant that he couldn't let me know about it, right? Feng Bujue asked. Yes, the date and location had to be kept a secret, Xiao Tan continued. Anyway, I was called to the warehouse. He paused for half a second and continued, when I got there, I didn't see anything strange. From the outside it looked like a very normal building. There was a kind-looking old man sitting in the gatehouse. I didn't even roll down the car window when he opened the gate and waved for me to enter. So, I drove into the warehouse and found a parking space to park my car. After I got out of the car, an uncle named Zhang Jiang came over and led me into the warehouse. "Hold on," Feng Bujue said. "You didn't even let me tell you the time and location, but you just told me the full name of the detective?" Hee. Xiao Tan laughed dryly and narrowed his eyes. "Brother Bujue, of course you wouldn't realize it when you heard the name Zhang Jiang. Let me tell you a few more names of the staff in the warehouse and you'll understand." He paused for a second and continued. "The rest of the staff in this warehouse are Li Lui, Zhou Jiu, Su Siwu. What the F***ck? Feng Bujue listened to 3 more names and found a pattern. "These names are all phonetic pronunciations of the surnames?" "Actually," Bao Qing continued, "not all the aliases in our world are like this," he explained. "Because some names are phonetic pronunciations of the surnames are very strange, such as Yu. What? What the F***ck is Yu? Brother Bujue didn't wait for him to finish before he complained. "So the person named Yu is actually a special agent?" "That's not right. So, the people who come up with those names are all special agents who use aliases? Then what about Diao Dei, the character in Shajiabang? An anti-spy?" "Let me finish first." Bao Qing also knew that Brother Ju was joking, so he didn't correct Diao Dei for being a fictional character. He only continued, "Because some words are not easy to break down into phonetic pronunciations, or are too strange to pronounce, we have another type of alias that is based on the radicals. For example, Feng Irma, Lu Wendao, Su Yenwu, and so on." "Ho!" Feng Bujue widened his eyes and thought for a few seconds. "Then, what about Man Bujue? Is his alias Man Tuchen okay? Or should we just change it to Chao San Air? Why do you care about that?" Bao Qing squinted at Brother Ju and said, "Don't worry, a devil like you will never be specially recruited by us. You don't have to worry about that." Unexpectedly, Xiao Tan looked at Bao Qing and said, "Master Bao." His expression was very serious. "If I am recruited by you in the future, I don't want to be called Wang Gani." "What's the use of telling me that?" Bao Qing was shocked. "Continue talking about your trip to the warehouse." "The warehouse." Chapter 1253. "Oh." Xiao Tan responded and returned to the main topic. "That." He quickly remembered what he was talking about and continued. "I followed Detective Zhang through a seemingly ordinary door, and then through a corridor that was probably a security inspection area. After that, we arrived at the real door. At first glance, the real door looked no different from a normal security door. There was a keyhole and a keypad on the door, but in fact, this door—" Hey, what are you doing?" Bao Qing interrupted Xiao Tan again. "Why are you being so detailed?" Xiao Tan was stunned. "Didn't you ask me to be specific?" "You don't have to be so specific," Bao Qing said with a drawl. "Why?" Xiao Tan was puzzled. Before Bao Qing could answer this question, Feng Bujue answered first, "Because the way you're describing it, the level of detail is enough for me to infer some substantial information." He paused and laughed. "Heh. If I find out the location of the warehouse in the future, I'm very likely to pose a threat to the warehouse based on the information I've obtained today." "Yes, that's it," Bao Qing said. "Oh." Xiao Tan thought for a while. "Okay. I'll skip the details." He paused for a second and continued, "Speaking of which, I followed Detective Zhang to the interior of the warehouse. The moment I entered, I was shocked. The space inside was so huge that it obviously exceeded the size of the building's exterior. Although it's not strange to see this in the game, it was the first time I saw such a facility that used hyperspace technology in real life. I was quite excited at the time. I didn't expect. This was just the beginning. In the next half an hour, I saw a bunch of things that changed my worldview. Xiao Tan looked at Bao Qing. By the way, can I tell you about the things in the warehouse? Sure. Bao Qing replied. You can tell me that now. Just don't talk about the situation at the entrance in such detail like you did just now. Oh. Xiao Tan nodded, took a sip of his drink and said, for example, I found that the power supply for the entire warehouse is from a human-powered generator. Are you sure the one who generated electricity is still a human? Feng Bujue could not help but interject when he heard the first example. Of course. Xiao Tan replied. The one in charge of the power generation is an agent who looks about the same age as me. Oh, the one called Li Lui. I even chatted with him for a bit. He said he's a newbie who just graduated from the police academy this year. Brother Ju immediately looked at Bao Qingyan and said, You guys are really recruiting from everywhere, huh? The department chief is the one in charge of human resources. Bao Qing shrugged and replied. His standards are still a mystery. Feng Bujue muttered, then looked at Xiao Tan and said, Well, if it's not a problem with the people, then is it because of the generator itself? That's for sure. Xiao Tan replied, But of course they won't tell me the principle of the machine. They just told me that, if a person with slightly higher than average physical fitness pedals on the machine for 8 hours, the power generated can supply the entire east coast of the United States for 5 minutes. What are these guys doing? Why don't they just use our country's power supply as an example? Feng Bujue said, Why are they talking about the evil United States? We generally don't use our country's power supply data as an example because the power supply data of our various provinces and cities are modified. Even our internal people may not be able to get the accurate numbers. The next second, Bao Qing explained for Xiao Tan, if the real numbers are released, it may make the public speculate some information that they shouldn't know. Feng Bujue heard this and casually asked, What do you mean? Don't tell me all our cities are designed like the third new Tokyo, that can sink into the ground when necessary? Brother Bujue didn't expect Bao Qing to be stunned when he heard this. After 2 seconds, Master Bao looked sideways and said, TSK? I think I said something wrong. Hey! You guessed it right? Feng Bujue widened his eyes and said in shock, It really works? Ah. Bao Qing felt that there was nothing to hide anymore, so she replied, It is indeed possible. However, not all buildings and facilities can be sunk or flipped. After all, the cost and difficulty of the construction are obvious. Therefore, at this stage, we still need to ensure that some of the more strategically important cities, such as the landmark and functional buildings, are given priority to complete the renovation. The main purpose of the transformation is to defend against nuclear attack. As for the other methods of attack, it's not a problem. The other methods are not a problem? Feng Bujue narrowed his eyes and said, What about the apostles' attack? If they want to attack, then so be it. Bao Qing said, As far as I know, before Chief Gu took over the 9th Division, he had already taken part in solving several crises caused by demigod-level targets. Even if something like an apostle were to attack us, he would be able to deal with it. Phew! Feng Bujue heard this and sighed. The more I know, the more I feel that the world I live in is dangerous. Yeah, Xiao Tan said, I had a similar feeling when I was in the warehouse. I guessed it too. Brother Bujue said, That warehouse was filled with those pedal-powered nuclear generators, right? Yes, the warehouse was used to store those things. Xiao Tan replied, By the way, when the generator was stored in the warehouse, its official name was Tesla's afternoon fitness partner. Shelter? Feng Bujue turned to look at Bao Qing. So, 9 Sciences is involved in Warehouse 13, an American TV series about storing special items, and the SCP Foundation. That's right. If we don't do it, who will? Bao Qing said, You have to know. Half a century ago, when there was no organization to store these things, all these things that could cause chaos in the world were circulating in the underground world. People back then were living in real danger, and they didn't even know how they died. Ha ha! Brother Bujua laughed dryly and said in a complicated tone, "It's a pity that I didn't get to live in those good times." "What good times?" Xiao Tan said, "Let's not talk about that era. Even now, even if most of those things are in the warehouse, I still deeply feel that it's a miracle that the world hasn't been destroyed yet." "What else is there?" Feng Bujua raised his eyebrows and asked, "Newton's leftover apples? Archimedes' levers?" "What you said. I don't know if there are any," Xiao Tan said. "I only went to visit some of the safety products that have been used in the warehouse itself, such as the urn of Mahist, seismograph, Hubble microscope, and so on. As for the dangerous goods, when I was walking in the dangerous goods area, I did see a lot of door plates with the names of stored items. I can't remember too many of them. Anyway, the ones that left the deepest impression were Orion Alpha Crown, pushback diagram, and something called sulfur organism. They seem to be alive. Even I want to go and take a look." When he said that, there was a glint in Feng Bujua's eyes that was enough to make others feel uneasy. "Okay. Just because of what you said, I have to go back to the office in the rain and snow to write a report today." Bao Qing's identity as an undercover had long been made public, so he was always very arrogant in front of Brother Bujua. Report it, I don't care anymore." Feng Bujua didn't care. He immediately said to Xiao Tan, "Go on, why did you go to the dangerous goods area of the warehouse?" "Now, I have to get to the reason why Manager Gu called me." At this point, Wang Tongji's expression suddenly turned serious. "He told me on the phone that the warehouse has recently received an item that is related to our Wang family, and he needs my help to test it." "Oh!" Feng Bujua wondered, "What is it?" "Siren's scale," Xiao Tan replied with 5 words. And Feng Bujua also spent 5 seconds to walk around his memory attic that was filled with various legends, urban legends and supernatural stories. He found a series of related knowledge that was related to them. "So it's the scale on the siren?" 5 seconds later, Brother Bujua asked. "I didn't see the siren, I only saw the scale," Xiao Tan replied, "but I think it should be." "Oh!" Feng Bujua chuckled. "What? Is your family related to the sirens? Do you have siren blood?" "I don't think so." Bao Qing also took the opportunity to tease him. "He's not good at music. One of the characteristics of the sirens is that they have an irresistible voice." "Can we not talk about that?" Xiao Tan quickly stopped the topic and said, "It's still a test. It's not complicated, just let me make a cut on my hand and drip a few drops of blood on the scale to stimulate its special effect." The next second, Feng Bujua and Bao Qing asked in unison, "What effect?" As he finished, Brother Ju turned to Bao Qing and said, Didn't you read the report? Why are you making such a fuss?" "Yes, I did." Bao Qing nodded. The report said that Wang Tongji went to the warehouse to help with an experiment, which caused a commotion, and then the commotion was resolved. As for the specific content of the experiment, the process of the commotion, it didn't say anything. But the list of losses in the warehouse was very detailed. F***ck. Feng Bujua immediately replied, "What's the point of that report?" Bao Qing laughed. "You don't get it, do you?" In this field, he could teach Brother Bujua well. Writing a report is different from writing a novel, especially a report from a special organization like ours. The most standard way to write a report is to explain the cause and effect, and finally calculate the account clearly. That's all you need to do. As for the process in the middle, I'll make it as simple as possible and as vague as possible. By doing so, I can effectively prevent these things from becoming unfavorable evidence against you one day in the future. At this point, Bao Qing took a sip of tea and said, Let me give you an example. Let's say you are the leader of the 9 sections. You have always had a good relationship with the higher-up. But one day there is a sudden change of personnel in those departments and a new batch of people who don't get along with you. Politicians, you know. Even if they can't interfere with you directly with their positions, they still have ways to find fault with you through various means. What those people do is no different from what they did in the 1960s and 1970s. They will dig up all the old accounts in your department and try their best to find fault with you. Then, they will impeach you on the grounds of improper handling that was decades overdue. And when that happens, you'll realize that meaningless reports are just like cards with the words impeccable printed on them. Listening to Bao Qing's words, Brother Zhu had an "I see" look on his face, as if he had learned a lot from Bao Qing. On the other hand, Xiao Tan looked like he didn't take Bao Qing's words to heart at all. You're indeed someone in the system. After Bao Qing finished speaking, Brother Zhu said, "You have a lot of experience in fighting. Don't compliment me." Bao Qing waved his hand. "I'm still young, and this was all taught by our section chief. He's the real person with a story." "Him?" Feng Bujue sneered. "Humph. I'd believe you if you said he assassinated the President of the United States." "He didn't, but there is a story circulating in our unit about him going on a business trip to the United States." Bao Qing continued, "The general story is, there was a meeting in the United States Congress where Section Chief Gu used a fake identity to speak on stage. His opening remarks were, 'Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start talking about the actual content, I have to say a few words. I'm sure everyone knows that at this moment, this room is filled with a group of fat conservative pigs. When their weight reaches a certain level, they will be promoted to members of the House of Representatives. This group of people who continue to sit here will only lower the air quality and the average IQ here. Here, I don't want to target anyone, I just hope that the people I mentioned will leave on their own. F***ck. Even Feng Bujue felt that this story was a bit exaggerated. What happened in the end? Did they all leave? No, he was asked to leave by the security guard. Bao Qing spread his hands and smiled. Okay, let's not talk about him. He paused for half a second before continuing. Anyway, that's all I saw in the report. Let's let Xiao Tan talk about the effect of the scale. At this time, Xiao Tan was still thinking about the story and was laughing foolishly. After a few seconds, he replied, "Oh, that effect, right?" He laughed dryly. "Ha! It's really a trap. Before I dripped my blood, they were all evasive and didn't tell me what the effect was. Later, I found out that the Siren's scale has the effect of guiding mortals to establish communication with the underworld." Chapter 1254. So, what happened after you dripped your blood? Feng Bujue asked. I heard the sound of water, Wang Tongji answered. Don't tell me that was the sound of you or someone else peeing in your pants, Brother Zhu said. Of course not, Xiaotan said. I heard something that sounded like a river flowing. Santu River? Yellow Spring? Styx River? Bao Qing repeated the question 3 times. That, I am not too sure. Xiaotan shrugged. But I do know that in many religions and myths, the passage that connects the human world and the underworld is described as a river. I believe the sound that I heard was the sound of that river. Then, what happened after you heard the sound? Feng Bujue asked again. I also saw many fragments, many memory fragments that did not belong to me. At this point, Xiaotan could not help but frown. Most of them were scenes related to death, like the memory before I was murdered or the moment before I was run over by a train. They did not cause you any mental corruption, did they? Feng Bujue looked at his brother's expression and asked out of concern. Xiaotan replied. Not really, because those fragments were just visual and auditory memories. For me, it was like watching a bunch of unrelated horror movie clips. In comparison, some of the scripts in Thriller Paradise are scarier than this. Oh. Brother Jew heard that and nodded in relief. At that moment, Master Bao mocked him from the side. When you said, "Not really," I thought the second half of your sentence would be, "My mind has been tainted by the super pollution source that is Brother Jew, so I have lost the ability to feel things of this level." Ha ha ha. Xiao Tan heard that and laughed happily. Now that you mention it, that is possible. Hey, what is there to be happy about? Feng Bujue narrowed his eyes. Also, he turned to look at Bao Qing. What do you mean by super source of pollution? How did you define it? It was defined by an expert who has counseled me since I was young, Bao Qing answered. Which expert? Tell me the name, Feng Bujue said. For the sake of his or her safety, I think it is better for you to never know his or her name. Bao Qing tilted his head to avoid Brother Jew's gaze. He turned to Xiao Tan and said, "Come, let's continue talking about the fragments. There's nothing else to say." Xiao Tan added, "Then the test will be over." Ah. Bao Qing was puzzled. That's it. Yes, that's it, Xiao Tan replied. Then, what is the meaning of this test? Feng Bujue asked. The purpose of the test is to see how the scale will react when it comes into contact with my blood. Xiao Tan answered. They have already completed the other tests, such as what will happen when a normal person's blood comes into contact with the scale. What will happen when a spiritual ability user's blood comes into contact with the scale? What will happen if you hold the scale in your hand while meditating? What will happen if you stay with the scale for a long period of time, etc.? He paused for half a second before continuing. As for me, I am a special case. Section Chief Gu felt that there was a chance that my blood would trigger different reactions, so he arranged for this test. But there was nothing special about the results. Bao Qing asked. Yes, at least they told me that there was nothing special, Xiao Tan replied. That is strange. Bao Qing rubbed his chin and pondered. Since there was nothing unusual during the test, how did the accident happen? Oh, about that. Xiao Tan answered calmly. This is what happened. After I completed the test, Detective Zhang led me back to where we came from. At that time, we didn't know that when I passed by the 4th containment area for the first time, I had already triggered a reaction from a certain item that could sense spiritual energy on the shelf. So, when I passed by the 4th containment area for the second time, the item fell down from the shelf due to the gravitational force I generated. Fortunately, the item itself was harmless, but when it fell, it coincidentally brushed against the prank mirror that was placed at the bottom of the shelf. After the mirror flipped over, the cloth covering it slipped off. Just as the mirror was about to reflect on me, Uncle Zhang Jiang quickly turned around and pushed me down so that I wouldn't be exposed to the mirror. But he was exposed to the mirror. Hearing this, Bao Qing understood what happened. So what if he was exposed to the mirror? Feng Bujue still didn't understand, so he continued to ask. If someone was exposed to the mirror, the thing in the mirror would transform into that person's appearance and escape from the mirror, Bao Qing said. Then it would start to prank the person. It sounds like that thing is a little fairy or something? Feng Bujue asked. No, it should be described as a hysterical and unusually cunning monster. Judging from Bao Qing's expression, he obviously had a story to tell. The monster in the mirror is like a manifestation of pranks. It plays pranks on people just for the sake of playing pranks. From its perspective, there is nothing that it can't prank. It doesn't even have the concept of consequences, responsibility, guilt. Although it doesn't have any destructive power, you can imagine, in a place like the warehouse, if it was allowed to roam freely, it would cause a terrible chain reaction. Master Bao, have you worked in a warehouse before? Xiao Tan asked. Judging from your tone, you seem to have dealt with this mirror before. That's because, a few years ago, I was involved in the entire process of storing this item, Bao Qing explained. Bao Qing explained, that day, Corey received a piece of news. A man who had attempted suicide claimed that someone who looked exactly like him was impersonating him, and that someone had ruined his life. No matter how much he explained, no one around him believed what he said. This case quickly caught our attention. So, a few detectives and I rushed to the police station to investigate. After confirming that this person wasn't insane and wasn't lying, we took him away and questioned him in more detail. After that, I joined the action team and went directly to the man's house to investigate. From there, I discovered the existence of the prank mirror. After that, we found out that the man had found the mirror in a second-hand shop that was clearing out its inventory. He saw that the mirror had a strange shape, and although the frame was old, the surface of the mirror was still clear. He thought that it was a valuable antique. After some bargaining, he bought the mirror and brought it home. Who would have thought that what he brought home was actually a terrible disaster? When Feng Bujue heard this, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "Then, how did you manage to store the mirror and the monster that was hiding in the mirror?" This needs to be explained properly, Bao Qing said. It was really difficult to catch the monster because it had the ability to teleport within a short distance. On top of that, it also had the ability to read minds. In other words, when you were near it, it could know what you were thinking. These are all abilities that are very convenient for pranks. Brother Ju laughed. Fortunately, this monster also has a weakness. Bao Qing did not continue the conversation. Instead, he continued, in fact, the various characteristics of this monster were written on the frame of the mirror. However, as it was written in an ancient language, ordinary people would not be able to understand it. But you are not ordinary people, Feng Bujue said. Yes, we are not, Bao Qing replied. So, after we took a picture of the words on the frame and sent it back to the department, someone sent back the translation in less than 10 minutes. He took a sip of tea and continued, as for the condition for this prank monster to come out of the mirror, the frame only gave us a rough idea, but later on, we obtained more detailed data through experiment. The basic trigger condition is for a human to appear in front of the mirror, even if it is only for 0.01 seconds. That will be enough. As for the limit of this appearance, we tested it out. If the head is reflected in the mirror, then it will be triggered immediately. As for the body parts other than the head, more than 60% of the body surface is reflected in the mirror on a two-dimensional plane, then it will be triggered. Oh, just like when Detective Zhang pounced on me. His back flashed in front of the mirror for a moment, and then he fell into the trap, Xiao Tan replied. Bao Qing nodded and said, and the way to trap the monster is to let the person who released it appear in the mirror together with the monster. At that moment, the prank monster will show its original form and be sucked into the mirror. For the next 6 minutes, it will not be able to come out again. Wait, Feng Bujue said, doesn't this monster know teleportation and mind reading? Then, how did you achieve this condition? Now we have to talk about its weakness. At this point, Bao Qing revealed a noncommittal expression. The monster that lives in the prank mirror has two weaknesses. First, it can't be more than 6,666 meters away from the mirror. Second, for some reason, if the mirror is stained with peanut butter, it must immediately come back and lick the mirror clean. Feng Bujue wanted to complain when he heard the first weakness, but he held himself back. However, when he heard the second weakness, he suddenly felt that the first weakness was quite normal. Ugh, why? The peanut butter part made some strange images appear in my mind. I think that's because your mind is too dirty, Bao Qing said calmly. Anyway, later, we transported the mirror to a place where there was no place to hide within a radius of a few kilometers. Then, we covered the eyes of the victim and brought them in front of the mirror. We sealed them with peanut butter, then covered the mirror and put it away. Such a dangerous thing. Is it really okay for you to just cover it with a piece of cloth? Feng Bujue immediately asked. Do you think we want to do this? Bao Qing replied. Experiments have shown that, except for linen, all the materials that are exposed to the mirror will be corroded, and the corrosion cycle is unpredictable. The same material can sometimes block the mirror for a week, and sometimes it can only block the mirror for a few minutes. In addition, if we use rope, tape, or something like that to fix the cloth to the mirror, or wrap the mirror with a large piece of cloth, the corrosion effect will be triggered, even if we use linen. Oh. So, Feng Bujue said, we can't put the mirror in a sealed space after covering it. Yes, Bao Qing said. Bao Qing continued, we tried to cover it and put it in a room by itself. We also tried to cover it and put it in a big cabinet or box. We even tried to put it in a colored ice cube. However, if we do this for more than 10 seconds, the mirror will automatically teleport out of the sealed space and appear in a random area nearby. He paused and showed a helpless expression. Also, it won't work even if you put it in a deserted place. When there are no humans or other things around, it will also teleport. The time and distance of teleportation will depend on the spaciousness of the surrounding area. Countless experiments have shown that this thing can only be maintained in a relatively stable state by piling it together with other furniture and sundries and covering it with linen to ensure that there are frequent human activities around it. I also have a question. At this time, Xiao Tan raised his right hand like a child asking a question in class. Have you tried to destroy this thing? For example, breaking it or melting it? Yes, Bao Qing replied. Bao Qing replied, during the first destruction experiment, we smashed the mirror with a hammer, but only a small crack was left on it. At the same time, or rather, at the same second, there was a magnitude 6 earthquake in southern Wales. Bao Qing paused for a second. The second time, we changed our position and smashed the mirror with a chisel. So, there was another earthquake in South Africa. Please note that these two events happened on the same day. What the? Feng Bujue was shocked. This thing is going against the natural order of things. After that, we didn't try anything similar again, Bao Qing said. What if we melted the mirror and caused the volcano under Yellowstone Park in the United States to erupt? Then we would be in big trouble, I see, Brother Ju replied and then looked at Xiao Tan. So, the day you went to the warehouse, it ended with Detective Zhang smearing peanut butter on the mirror? No. Xiao Tan shook his head. What? This time, it was Bao Qing who was shocked. No? Xiao Tan looked at Bao Qing and said, the detailed features of the mirror that you mentioned just now, this is the first time I've heard of it. Then, how did you trap the monster back into the mirror? Bao Qing asked anxiously. It's like this. Xiao Tan replied calmly. That day, after the mirror was revealed, I was also confused for a long time. First, I saw a man who looked exactly like Detective Zhang run out of the mirror and disappear in the blink of an eye. Then, I heard all sorts of alarms going off in the warehouse and the workers were all in a mess. Anyway, 5 minutes after the alarm went off, I was brought to a safe room. The police detectives told me to stay there and not move, and then they left. In the end, the moment they left the room, I realized the other Detective Zhang had appeared beside me. He was squatting on the floor, and was secretly tying the laces of my shoes together. At this point, Xiao Tan chuckled. So, I told him, can you please stop? But, he looked at me for 2 seconds and said yes. He stood up immediately and looked at me nervously and respectfully. I saw that he seemed to be quite obedient, so I tried to ask, can you go back into the mirror and not come out for a while? He looked like he was about to cry and said, okay, and then disappeared. At this point, Both Feng Bujue and Master Bao understood what he meant. This situation should be related to Wang Tongji's psionic power or bloodline. However, Xiao Tan did not seem to understand the root of the problem. Now that I think about it, could you have misunderstood the prankster monster? Maybe it was actually quite easy to talk to? Chapter 1255. It was a snowy day. In the evening, Feng Bujue sent away Xiao Tan and Bao Qing. Then, he started to work. After playing the game, eating, and chatting with his two friends for a whole day, Feng Bujue felt like he had learned a lot. First, he had gained a lot of inspiration for his writing. Second, he had learned a new way to come up with names. In any case, the work that followed went smoothly. Brother Ju, who was in good condition, finished a week's worth of work. He worked until midnight before he took a shower and lay down in the gaming hub. Then, he logged into the game in sleeping mode. Over the past few days, Brother Ju's time online had been stable. Other than playing with his teammates, he would also use his personal time to level up. After all, he still had the mission to win the candidate game, so leveling up his character's ability was a must. Due to the new update's extra reward system, Brother Ju could no longer level up through the 40% increase in current EXP like before. This had its pros and cons. The good thing was that his current level was earned through real game time. This way, it was very beneficial for the growth of his mastery and the acquisition of equipment and skills. There would not be a situation where his character level was high, but his overall strength was a little out of sync. The bad thing was that he had to spend several times more game time than before to earn EXP, something that he did not need to consider before. Even Feng Bujue could not help but complain. After someone moved away, it felt like I was returning to my room, but in reality, I was still sleeping in the gaming hub every day. Night, 11:55 p.m. Feng Bujue woke up in the login lobby and started his trip to Thriller Paradise that night. His habit after logging in did not change. He started by checking his emails. Brother Ju used his fast browsing speed to categorize the emails while deleting, blocking, ignoring, and replying to them. In the S2 competition, Serene Group had successfully increased Feng Bujue's popularity. Now, other than being a famous author, he was also labeled as a famous non-professional gamer. Dealing with these emails from fans in the gaming circle had also become his daily routine. Fortunately, this extra task was relatively easy for him. Compared to the time when he defeated the popular goddess Su Huaishang in the Battle of the Butterfly, the number of emails and the content of the emails were very friendly. What's going on? Just as Brother Ju was about to empty his mailbox, he suddenly caught a glimpse of an email signed by Snow. The appearance of this name caused Feng Bujue to be startled. Dear Mr. Crow, aka Feng Bujue, as you can see, I have also created an avatar in this game. To be honest, I have not come into contact with MMOs for many years because I do not have a good impression of them. However, this Thriller Paradise has exceeded my expectations. In fact, it is so good that it has surprised me. I am ashamed to say this. I think I have completely fallen in love with it. Laughing, even though my level is still very low, I hope there will be a chance to play together with you in the future. Feng Bujue quickly read the content of the email in his mind and moved his gaze back to the signature. Snow, It feels like I have been targeted by a very troublesome person. Obviously, this Snow who wrote the email was the organizer who was interested in Brother Ju, Adolf Snow. Other things aside, based on this two-word nickname alone, it was clear that this was not a normal person. After all, it had been 8 months since Thriller Paradise's server had been open. At this stage, in this game with an extremely large player base, to register a 2-word or 4-byte ID that had a certain meaning was practically impossible. Even some meaningless 2-word combinations had been used up. However, Snow was able to create an avatar that had the same name as him at this stage. So, what did this mean? In any case, Feng Bujue's first reaction was, the person who had taken over the idea of Snow must have experienced something during this period. Perhaps he or she had received a large sum of money, perhaps he or she had been threatened with violence, perhaps he or she had been invited to join a strange bet, or perhaps he or she had been placed in a sack and sunk to the bottom of the Huangpu River. No matter what, one thing was certain: when Snow decided to come to Thriller Paradise, the idea of Snow no longer belonged to anyone else. Sigh, people and things that give me headaches keep popping up. After Feng Bujue thought about it, he deleted the email and said, "It feels like, be it in the game or in real life, I am drifting further and further away from the life of a normal person. Is this trying to push me back into the world of 8th grader syndrome?" Even though he said that, he did not pay much attention to Snow's letter. After all, compared to people like Gu Chun and Woody, Snow was still far from them. Okay, today, I'll go take a look at the free exploration mode. After dealing with the email, Feng Bujue prepared to enter the scenario world. It was worth mentioning that after completing the scenario of A World Without Games, the reward that Feng Bujue received for clearing the scenario, randomly drawing a learnable skill card, allowed him to draw a very powerful compound skill. After he received the skill, he immediately learned it and equipped it in his skill bar. Name: The Book of Greed. Skill card property: active, permanent skill type, workmanship, spiritual art, summoning effect. Randomly summon a weapon of at least perfect grade from the void. Cooldown: 24 hours. Consumption: 1 pint of human blood, 35% of maximum stamina points and spiritual energy points. Prerequisites: crafting, sorcery, summoning, a rank or above. Remark: the duration of the summoned weapon is inversely proportional to its rarity, attribute, and effect. Players cannot sell the summoned weapon to NPCs or monsters. Only the summoner himself can possess the weapon summoned by the Tome of Greed, even if he does not meet the requirements to equip it. After acquiring this skill, Brother Ju finally gritted his teeth and used the game coins to expand his skill bar. This journey was also the first time Feng Bujue had returned to the free exploration mode of the universe after obtaining the 13 skill slots. Chapter 1256. A hero is not braver than a normal person, but his courage lasts 5 minutes longer than yours. Emerson. Feng Bujue, level 51. Please select the game mode that you wish to join. You have selected free exploration mode. Every time you enter this mode, 20,000 game coins will be consumed. Please confirm. Confirmed. Searching for the multiverse that you belong to. Downloading. Please wait a moment. Welcome to Thriller Paradise. Download complete. You are currently in free exploration mode. This mode does not have a quest system, a time limit, or an AFK-like effect. You can travel between the login lobby and the scenario world through the safe house. Every time you enter this mode, 20,000 game coins will be consumed. The scenario has started. Please leave this safe house in 5 minutes. After the familiar system announcement, Feng Bujue once again arrived at the safe house in free exploration mode. Since the place that he left this universe last time was still the hero's dormitory, when he returned this time, he appeared in the toilet of room Z250. What was I doing before I left last time? Before Feng Bujue walked out from the toilet, he thought back to his previous experience in this world. Oh, right. Planet Park. Soon, that memory became clear. When he returned last time, Feng Bujue, Flea Man, Banana Addict, Sarah, and Green Shooting Star, the 4 planetary heroes, had arrived at Planet Park. They had been involved in the battle between the 3 races: mischievous children, plaza dancers, and beggars. There was no need to go into the details of the mission. In any case, the end result was, The two wanted criminals of Super Alliance, the lingering young man and anti-Buckteeth, were captured after being beaten half to death. And before the few heroes returned to Super Alliance, the fighting expert with the title of God of War in the park expressed his strong desire to spar with Fong Bujue, so the man followed with a smile on his face. By the way, is it really okay for the man who sleeps in the park to follow me? When Fong Bujue walked out from the toilet, he was still mumbling to himself. Even though he is not a wanted criminal, at least he has the power of a planetary hero. If he causes a ruckus here, it will cause quite a lot of damage. His concern was the same as Toadman's. And Toadman was a man who had no room for error. Therefore, he, who had been watching Brother Ju, had already prepared everything when Hwarong Daoist was on its way back. To put it simply, Toadman's countermeasure to Taisan was to try and develop him into a hero under the premise of being on guard. If he did not succeed, he would try his best to maintain a relatively friendly relationship with him. In short, he would try his best not to push this kind of person into the enemy camp. Ding dong. Huh! Just as Fong Bujue sat in front of the computer and was about to find some more missions to do, the doorbell of his room rang. Brother Ju didn't think much about it. He walked to the door and opened it. At this time, two people stood outside the door. One of them was Toad, and the other was Flea Man, who performed a mission with Brother Ju not long ago. Fong Bujue saw Toad, and narrowed his eyes. You really came, hee. Toad smiled at him. I came as soon as I finished my treatment. What about you? Fong Bujue turned to look at Flea Man again. I'm monitoring Toad. Flea Man immediately replied in his sharp voice. Hey. Brother Ju could not see the expression on Flea Man's face when he said that. After all, Flea Man's face had no obvious facial features. But he still looked at the man and said, You said it right in front of him, ha! The next second, Headquarters took over the conversation and said, There's nothing to hide in the first place, and I don't mind. As he spoke, Headquarters showed a slightly smug expression. This just proves that I'm the kind of powerhouse who needs a planetary hero to follow and be on guard against. What are you talking about? You haven't seen the two dancing Hindus. Fong Bujue immediately complained in his heart, but he didn't say so. He just said, So? What do you want from me? Headquarters muttered and continued, Mr. Pokerman, actually, I just feel that you are very talented in fighting, and I want to make friends with you, so that we can research and discuss the theory of actual combat martial arts together. Fong Bujue said, Just because of this, that's right. What else could it be? Headquarters asked. What do you mean by otherwise? Fong Bujue replied in a matter-of-fact tone, If you want me to say it, I can list a dozen more motives. For example, you, a person who sleeps in the park, want to follow us to get medical treatment because you don't have medical insurance. Or you want to extort a pension from the Usua Alliance. Or maybe you are a spy sent by the Universal Homeless Alliance to infiltrate our military. When Headquarters heard this, his expression became a little awkward. Ha. He laughed dryly and replied, I've never heard of the Universal Homeless Alliance, and I definitely wouldn't do something like extortion. But, he scratched his head, it's true that I'm seriously injured and need your medical treatment. Headquarters was a relatively honest person, or rather, no matter what the situation was, he still retained the dignity of a martial artist. Therefore, when Brother Ju mentioned it, he was rather ashamed to admit that he was here to get medical treatment. Actually, you don't have to be embarrassed. 2 seconds later, it was Flea Man who spoke up to smooth things over for Headquarters. In the last few hundred cosmic years, one cosmic year is about 52 hours, there hasn't been any particularly big crisis. Our medical resources are very adequate. Even if it's a criminal, we won't leave him in the lurch, let alone you. From what he said, It wasn't hard to tell that. Toad Man had already communicated with him. Flea Man was a very strong, experienced, and reliable planetary-level hero. In addition, he just so happened to cross paths with Headquarters during this operation, so Toad Man directly handed over the task of guarding against and winning over Headquarters to him. After a few seconds, Fong Bujue said to Headquarters again, "Now that you're cured, you can go back to the Park Planet. You don't have to come looking for me again." Then, he reached out to close the door. "Wait!" At this time, Headquarters hurriedly stopped him. "I know. As a galactic-level hero, you might think that I'm not qualified to discuss martial arts with you, right? It's okay. Let me show you something." As he spoke, he reached his hand into his collar. Chapter 1257. Although Headquarters looked like a human, he was not an earthling after all. Therefore, when he took something out of his throat, Fong Bujue was not surprised. Poker Man Headquarters took out a wooden object that was about the size of a medicine ball. He looked at Fong Bujue and smiled. "Do you know what this is?" Fong Bujue glanced at the object and replied, "A dodecahedral Rubik's Cube made of wood?" His description was still quite accurate. Indeed, the object that Headquarters took out was basically a dodecahedral Rubik's Cube in terms of structure, and its material did not seem to be any different from wood. On the surface, it seems so. Headquarters continued, but in reality, as he spoke, he held the wooden Rubik's Cube with both of his hands and exerted force. In an instant there was a strange creaking sound coming from his palms, and his arms trembled from the exertion of force. It was obvious that Headquarters used a lot of force, at least enough to crush a lump of metal. However, the wood in his hands, the Rubik's Cube that was embedded with rotating grooves, did not show any signs of damage. "Oh." Fong Bujue looked at it for a few seconds and replied, "On the surface it looks like a tool used to train intelligence, but in reality, you used it to train your grip strength, right?" He nodded. "Okay, I think I know why you slept in the park. Do you have anything else?" Brother Ju just wanted to get rid of this guy as soon as possible so that he could find a high-level danger zone to farm for equipment and skills. "Hey, Poker Man, you misunderstood." However, Headquarters did not notice the impatience and sarcasm in his words and continued, "This is not a tool used for training. It is my family heirloom." "Let me guess." Fong Bujue took the opportunity to continue, "Did your ancestors leave behind a rule that if a descendant's IQ is not enough to restore this Rubik's Cube, he will not be allowed to inherit the family business and be kicked out to sleep in the park?" His joke was quite funny. Even Flea Man, who was more composed, could not help but laugh. No. However, Headquarters still did not realize that this was a joke. He replied very seriously, "The words left behind by my ancestor are, 'This is the heavenly spirit earthly fiend box, given by the great immortal of the unorthodox school. Whoever opens this box will be able to obtain unparalleled martial arts, travel unhindered in the universe, and let me see.'" When he heard the term shaman, Fong Bujue's expression shifted slightly. Before the Headquarters finished, he reached out his hand and said that. "That's what I'm going to say." When Brother Ju said, "Take a look," he didn't just mean, "take a look." He wanted the Headquarters to hand over the Rubik's Cube to him, and then take a look. This request, the Headquarters would not easily agree to it. After all, this was the family heirloom. It was fine to show it to others, but handing it over to others for them to see was another matter altogether. "What? Are you afraid that I won't return it?" Fong Bujue saw through the other party's thoughts at a glance. He continued, "This is the Headquarters of the Yuchao Alliance, and there is a very experienced planetary hero standing next to you. Even if I wanted to steal something from you, I wouldn't choose this time and place, right?" After hearing what he said, Headquarters felt that he was right. Therefore, after hesitating for a few seconds, the war god in the park handed his family heirloom to Feng Bujue. Oh, I see. After Feng Bujue took the Rubik's Cube, he looked at it carefully for a moment and said, "Then where is the martial arts in the box now? Have you learned it?" Headquarters was taken aback by his question. He replied hesitantly, "That, this box has never been opened." "You can't solve it?" Feng Bujue asked straightforwardly. "Ha ha!" Headquarters laughed again. "Mr. Pokerman, you might be oversimplifying things. The solution to this box is much more complicated than the usual dodecahedral Rubik's Cube. As you can see, the colors of the 12 sides of the box are all the same. In other words, this is not a device that relies on color like the Rubik's Cube. Instead, it needs to be based on the words carved on the 132 puzzle pieces. Since you haven't solved it, why are you showing it to me?" Feng Bujue did not wait for headquarters to finish and interrupted. "You want me to help you solve it?" No. No. Headquarters put on an unfathomable expression and said, "In fact, after generations of research in our family, we've discovered that it doesn't matter even if we don't open the Big Dipper Earthly Fiend box because the outer layer also contains the principles of martial arts. As long as the words on the surface of the box are combined into a certain combination and move according to the shape and meaning, we can comprehend the corresponding moves from it. And the moves that can be combined like this are almost endless." He continued in a rather proud tone, "To tell you the truth, many of the sure-kill moves in my surreal style were comprehended through this box." "Oh," Feng Bujue replied absent-mindedly, as he used his nimble fingers to spin the Rubik's Cube in his hand at high speed. "So, you want to study this with me?" "Ha ha, that's right," Headquarters said. "I've heard that you're an Earthling from a parallel universe, right?" He did not wait for Brother Ju's reply and continued, "I've always heard about the Earthlings' achievements in the field of combat, or rather in the field of martial arts. Since the Earthlings' combat power is very weak, they have developed countless combat techniques and schools. However, it's impossible for me to exchange pointers with the Earthlings' martial arts masters. When the difference in strength, speed, and reaction is too great, it's impossible to infer whether the opponent's moves are brilliant or not. And the martial arts that is only based on the theoretical level has limited meaning. It won't improve the actual level by much. Fortunately, I've met you now. Mr. Pokerman, from your performance on Planet Park, it's obvious that you're a master. Moreover, you have a physical ability that far surpasses that of the average Earthling. You're an ideal martial arts friend." When Headquarters said this, Feng Bujue's hand suddenly stopped. Then, with a buzzing sound, the Heavenly Spirits and Earthly Fiends box in Brother Ju's hand floated up on its own, and the rotating groove on the box glowed faintly. "It's done," Feng Bujue said in a very normal tone. "It's unlocked." His words left Headquarters and Flea Man dumbfounded. They couldn't react for a long time. Just as the two of them were in a daze, the box unfolded from the inside like a flower. However, the treasure floated in midair and slowly turned into a flat plane. The 132 pieces of the puzzle moved side by side, causing the entire plane to deform and recombine. In the end, the Heavenly Dipper Earthly Fiend box turned into a pentagonal tablet, and the words on the tablet also gathered into a single piece. What happened? It was only when Brother Ju handed the tablet back to Headquarters that the latter came back to his senses and asked, "Didn't I say that I've unlocked the box?" Feng Bujue repeated calmly. How did you do it?" Headquarters stuttered, and his eyes were full of shock. "It's not that difficult," Feng Bujue replied casually, and then explained, "The real difficulty of unlocking your Heavenly Spirits and Earthly Fiends box is not that every piece on the surface has a unique pattern, but how to find the only correct, original arrangement." He paused for a moment and then said, "I just confirmed that the names of the 36 Heavenly Spirits, the 72 earthly fiends, and the 24 solar terms are engraved on the surface of the 132 small surfaces. Considering that the box is a dodecahedron, and the number of these three types of puzzles is not equal to each other, my first way of restoring it is naturally to distribute these three types of things equally on each surface. In this way there are 3 heavenly spirits, 6 earthly fiends, and 2 solar terms on each surface, which is exactly 11 pieces. Also, during my inspection, I also discovered that the most central piece of the jigsaw puzzle is a heavenly constellation. Apart from the 12 pieces, the remaining 24 heavenly constellations are all corner pieces. This also gave me greater confidence in the equal distribution conjecture. So, with this as my goal, I began to try. The part about the Rubik's Cube is the easiest because I already know how to solve the 5-sided Rubik's Cube. In fact, a Rubik's Cube where every piece has a unique pattern is easier to solve than a Rubik's Cube that is classified by color. So, at this point, Brother Jew had already handed the unlocked heavenly spirits and earthly fiends box to HQ. He shrugged and showed a non-committal expression. The riddle that has troubled my family for over 100 centuries has finally been solved. 2 seconds later, HQ, who did not fully understand Brother Jew's explanation, simply threw those words to the back of his mind. He immediately raised the pentagonal board and roared to the sky. "What are you yelling for?" At this moment, Feng Bujue was standing less than a meter away from him. The two of them were only separated by a door frame, so Brother Jew's face was covered in saliva. "If you want to yell, yell further away. Don't yell at my door. Hey!" Before he could finish his sentence, HQ raised his hand and grabbed his shoulder tightly. He said with tears in his eyes, "Mr. Pokerman, I, Tai-san, will repay this kindness with my life." An hour later, at the Yuchao Alliance headquarters, Sweet Wine Park. At this time, 2 people were sitting on a bench in the park. Among them, the one whose whole body was shining was the tin foil man, Kota's Nito. Of course, he was glowing not because he used any special ability, but because the light in the park was very good. On the other hand, the man sitting next to the tinfoil paper man had a gloomy expression on his face. His entire person looked gloomy. Even the tone of his voice was gloomy. "The matter is more or less like this. Haha." After listening to Feng Bujue's description, the tin-foil man immediately laughed. "So, HQ went to participate in the hero level test?" "Yes," Feng Bujue replied. "He said he wanted to be my assistant, and he looked forward to becoming my partner one day." "What do you think?" the tin-foil man asked again. "I rejected him on the spot," Feng Bujue replied. "What did you say to him?" F***ck off. "What I'm asking is, what kind of euphemism did you use to express the meaning of F***ck off? F***ck off. The tin-foil man decided to bypass this question and said, "Actually, I think this is a good thing. This person from HQ does have the strength of a planet-level hero. Other than his abnormal obsession with fighting skills, there is nothing unstable about him. If he really wants to be a hero, we, the Yushuan Alliance, will definitely welcome him." "I don't care if he wants to join," Feng Bujue said. "I just don't need any assistant." "Don't worry about that," the tin-foil man replied. "The establishment of a hero's assistant and hero's partner requires both parties to submit an application and pass the review." "That sounds like a wedding." Feng Bujue heard that, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was an insult. "Haha, yes, almost." The tin-foil man laughed. In fact, many heroes' partners eventually developed into a couple. "Is that so?" Feng Bujue narrowed his eyes and said, "Then I can't let HQ succeed." "That's your freedom," the tin-foil man said. The tin-foil man said, "But, if it were me, I wouldn't discourage him like this." He said in a very amiable tone, "As for me, I would first accept HQ's offer to become my assistant, then guide him on his own path to becoming a hero. When he truly becomes a hero, I would find the right time to remove him from his assistant position. At that time, he would naturally understand my good intentions. Oh, I see. Feng Bujue heard this and rolled his eyes. Then, are there any beautiful female heroes in the Alliance who have the same awareness as you? You know, the type who is very beautiful, wears skin-tight clothes that expose their breasts and legs, and has a super hot body. If there is, make a list for me. I have a strong feeling that I need their guidance. Ha 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 ha. The tin foil man was immediately amused by Brother Jew. Okay, Brother Poker Man. He paused, jokes aside. To be honest, you and Toad Man are very similar. Even though you will team up with others, you will always attach great importance to your personal space, because you both have too many secrets. The tin foil man's words obviously had a hidden meaning. Feng Bujue also caught this point very keenly. I don't understand what you are talking about. He chose to deny it with a cold attitude and threw out a suggestion of a trade. But I think I can still accept taking this newcomer from HQ to do a few missions or something. Chapter 1258. After chatting with the tin foil man, Feng Bujue started to wander around the planet that was the headquarters of the Yushuan Alliance. There were still a few hours before HQ would complete the test. There was not enough time to accept missions and deal with crises. Therefore, Brother Jew decided to use these few hours to learn more about the local customs of this universe, as well as the information and history of the Yushuan Alliance itself. A normal person might think that this kind of learning was very troublesome, but Feng Bujue quite liked to absorb this kind of random knowledge. Perhaps this was a kind of occupational disease. To make a long story short, Brother Jew wandered around the artificial planet for about 2 hours before returning to the hero dormitory. Then, he sat in front of the computer and started to read the written information. In the next hour or so, in addition to a lot of general knowledge in this universe, Brother Jew also looked up a lot of information about the Supreme Council of the Yushuan Alliance, as well as records of some of the major events in the Alliance's past. At this moment, Feng Bujue did not know that the information he had read and memorized during this period of time would soon be of great use. Ding dong! After another 10 minutes, just as Feng Bujue was engrossed in reading the information, the doorbell of the dormitory rang again. Brother Jew looked at the time and guessed that HQ had come looking for him after completing the test. So, he closed the interface that he was reading, walked to the door, and opened it. Ah, it's you, Feng Bujue said weakly when he saw HQ. Haha, I've kept you waiting, Poker Man, HQ said as he raised the hero ID card in his hand and waved it in front of Brother Jew. I'm now a planet-level hero. Park Man, how come I'm not surprised that you've been given this kind of low-sounding title? Feng Bujue instantly mocked. Headquarters still didn't get the point. He continued, actually, I originally wanted to be called War God of the Park, but it didn't pass the review. They said that this title sounded like a hooligan looking for trouble in a public place. It didn't sound heroic. As he spoke, he showed a helpless expression and spread out his hand. They're quite accurate. Feng Bujue narrowed his eyes and muttered softly. Because he said it very softly, headquarters didn't hear him clearly and asked, Ah, what did you say? Ah, it's nothing. Feng Bujue raised his voice and changed the topic. I was thinking that since you have officially become a hero, then, as your senior, it shouldn't be a problem for me to take you on a few missions as a novice guide, right? Oh! Headquarters was overjoyed. Mr. Pokerman, do you agree to let me be your assistant? No. Feng Bujue said the word no very decisively, then paused for 2 seconds and said, I'm just taking you on a few missions and guiding the novice. Okay, whatever you say. Headquarters' enthusiasm wasn't affected. In his opinion, It didn't matter whether he submitted the application for an assistant relationship, as long as he could learn a few tricks from Pokerman. Just like that, the two who reached a consensus immediately began to search for missions through the Hero self-service terminal. Not long after, a sea-level crisis entered Fong Bujue's line of sight, Warm Ocean Star, the third planet in the Lyceum galaxy and the closest planet to the star Beta Lyceum. Its star age was about 1 billion years and was in a stable period. Warm Ocean Star's day length was 40 universe cycles, its gravity was 3 times that of a bungee jump, it had an atmosphere, no satellites, and the land and ocean area was 1.4. Just from these data, the environment of this planet was suitable for many races of aliens to live in. However, the population of this planet was 0. The reason was that there was a very unique natural phenomenon on this planet, the supergravitational vortex, hereinafter referred to as the superspin. Volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis. These natural disasters that people on Earth were familiar with were nothing compared to the superspin. The effect caused by the superspin was not local destruction of a certain area on the planet, but an indiscriminate impact on the entire planet and its surrounding spacetime. When the huge and uncontrollable gravitational field became active, it would cause the surrounding spacetime structure to be distorted, which would cause a series of unpredictable effects. For example, the planet itself would stop rotating or even reverse rotation for a certain period of time, the physical structure of some substances would self-disintegrate at the molecular level, and the thought and body of some highly intelligent creatures would seriously collapse, etc. These were just the known consequences. Since there were very few intelligent life forms that survived the superspin, and most of them had undergone different degrees of physiological and psychological changes, people's understanding of the superspin was only at the stage of observing it from afar. Of course, someone had proposed that they could log onto Warm Ocean Star during the interval of the superspin to record experiments, to further study the law of this natural phenomenon. So, what was the result? The person who made this suggestion, the team that he led, and the data that they collected, they were all finished. There was no doubt that they were all swallowed up by the superspin. In most cases, the superspin would occur at least 300 cosmic cycles apart. However, there were times when the superspin spasms would occur every 2 cosmic cycles. Once this phenomenon broke out, it would be impossible for any living thing within its range to escape. This was why this very habitable planet had always been empty. No race or individual dared to live here. In fact, no one dared to stay or even get close to the planet, let alone colonize it. However, today there was a space shuttle belonging to the Cosmos Super Alliance, resolutely entering the planet's atmosphere. Search completed. Optical camouflage activated. Switching to automatic landing mode. Estimated landing 3 kilometers away from the target. The gravity and pressure in the cabin have been synchronized with the current planet. Countdown to landing begins. 30, 29, 28. This spaceship is really convenient. I feel like even an idiot can pilot it. Before Fong Bujue finished listening to the voice notification, his hands left the control panel of the spaceship. He leaned back in the pilot's seat and said, "If I knew that galactic heroes could freely apply for this small assault spaceship, I wouldn't have accepted the previous mission at all. I would have just gotten a spaceship. It would have been better to find some solo missions." At this time, Brother Ju's attitude seemed very relaxed, but Headquarters, who was traveling with him, was already pale and sweating profusely. Mr. Pokerman. Headquarters' voice was also trembling when he spoke. "Do we really have to land? What do you think?" Fong Bujue asked in return. "What I mean is, of course, to stay outside the range of the superspin and observe." Headquarters quickly replied, Anyway, as soon as the superspin comes, the wanted criminals hiding on this planet will be done for, right?" Feng Bujue didn't wait for headquarters to finish speaking and continued the second half of the sentence. That's right. Headquarters replied. Heh! Feng Bujue laughed. According to your logic, our mission is meaningless. He paused for half a second before saying, if the act of landing on warm ocean star is equivalent to being done for, then when the intelligence department received the news that the mad doctor landed on warm ocean star, wouldn't it be easier to just cross his name off the wanted list? If it was me, I would have crossed it off. Headquarters replied loudly. Isn't it strange to send people to warm ocean star to carry out an arrest mission? No, I don't think it's strange, and I think this operation is very necessary. Feng Bujue responded in a calm tone. Just as he said this, the small assault ship they were in had landed. Before the ship came to a stop, Brother Ju had already unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up from his seat. Okay, let's go. This. Headquarters hesitated for 2 seconds before sighing. Sigh okay. At this point, there was no turning back. After all, there was only one ship. No matter how afraid headquarters was of death, he couldn't leave Brother Ju behind and escape alone. What he wanted now was to complete the mission as soon as possible so that they could escape this planet before the next superspin happened. I know you have doubts about the necessity of this mission. After the two disembarked from the ship, Feng Bujue led the way. Yes. How can you not have doubts when encountering a mission like this that has a high risk of losing your life? Headquarters replied. So, I'll take this opportunity to tell you why I said this mission is very necessary. Feng Bujue continued. I'd like to hear more. Headquarters replied. Then, Feng Bujue paused for a few seconds before saying, First, have you seen the information on the insane professor? I just saw it on the ship. Headquarters replied. What kind of supervillain do you think he is? Feng Bujue asked again. Evil, cunning, knowledgeable, extremely high IQ. Headquarters repeated as he recalled the words in the information. That's enough. Feng Bujue didn't wait for him to finish and interrupted him. That's enough. He paused for half a second before saying, then? Do you think a person like this wouldn't know the risks of setting foot on warm ocean planet? The moment he heard this question, Headquarters' expression suddenly changed. Oh, that's right, he definitely knows. If he knows, why would he still come? Feng Bujue asked again. Headquarters didn't answer immediately. With his intelligence, he needed more time to think about this question. Let me tell you. Brother Ju did not plan to wait for him, so he gave the answer after 3 seconds. There are only a few possibilities. 1. He wants to commit suicide. 2. There is a problem with his mental state or memory. 3. To achieve a certain goal, he is willing to put himself in danger and risk it all on one throw. Oh. Headquarters nodded. Then, the situation before us, which one is it? How would I know? Feng Bujue replied in a matter-of-fact tone. So there's something you don't know? Headquarters' question was truly strange. Of course, Feng Bujue replied. I'm not a god. There are plenty of things I don't know. Then why did you say this mission is very necessary? Headquarters asked. Hearing this, Feng Bujue rolled his eyes. He thought to himself, I've already said this much. And this idiot still doesn't understand. Why do I have to be completely clear? Sigh. After a long sigh, Brother Ju continued. Because, based on the analysis of the mad scientist's usual cautious style, if he really came here to achieve a certain goal, then his plan this time must be very shocking. If we leave it alone, it's very likely to develop into a B or even a level crisis. But what if he really wants to commit suicide or go crazy? Headquarters continued. Then we'll have to confirm it on the spot to know. Feng Bujue said. Also, if you think about it carefully, although the possibility of suicide or losing his mind is possible, it's far less likely than the third hypothesis, right? Headquarters thought about it and said, yes. If he wants to commit suicide, there are many ways. The probability of deliberately coming to warm ocean star to seek death is very low. And the probability of coming to this planet when he's mentally unstable is even lower. Phew! You finally understand, right? Fong Bujue let out a long sigh and looked back. I understand. After replying, the doubt on the head chief's face finally disappeared. Then, Fong Bujue continued, how about we speed up? You don't want to die in a natural disaster in the first mission, right? At the same time, too. 5 kilometers away from the two, the mad scientist was busy in the middle of a large pile of temporary equipment. As one of the most intelligent supercriminals in the universe, his motive for coming to warm ocean star was just as Brother Ju expected. There was indeed a plan that was worth his life that needed to be implemented. What was this plan? The answer can be summed up in 4 words: time travel. Like many evil scientists, the mad scientist's academic ability was very good. Recently, he developed a gadget called the light cone vibrator. I won't go into detail about the theory of this invention because I can't explain it clearly. Even if I could explain it clearly, for most people, when they read about this fictional theory of time and space wrapped in a physical shell, their eyes would be a mess. After they casually skimmed through this mess, these people might say that I'm just making up the word count. So, I won't go into the details of the setting. I'll just use this sarcastic detail to make up a few dozen words to show that I'm a straightforward person. In short, the mad scientist came to warm ocean star to use the power of the superspin to activate his light cone vibrator to achieve the purpose of time travel. At this moment, he also didn't expect his plan would really make history in the truest sense. Chapter 1259. Dr. Deranged, whose real name was Ares Deranged, was a male from the planet Destroyer. Planet Destroyer had a very high scientific standard, and Dr. Ares Deranged was the youngest person on the planet to receive the annual Explosion Award. Unfortunately, this genius scientist's ideas were too radical, and he was rejected and ostracized by the society on planet Destroyer. Over time, Ares Deranged's personality became more and more paranoid, and his research projects gradually went out of control. Finally, during one of his illegal, secret experiments, his experimental behavior caused a major accident. Not only did the accident cause a large number of civilian casualties, but it also seriously injured him. After the accident, 94% of Ares' deranged skin was burned. Some of his internal organs were permanently disabled, and he could only rely on instruments to replace them. In addition, he lost an entire arm. However, this did not make him feel remorseful, and it did not make him stop. After 6 months, Earth time, of excruciating pain and a series of surgeries and treatments, Ares' deranged's body regained the ability to move independently. Then, he escaped from the hospital. After that, another half a year, also Earth time, passed, and a man who called himself Dr. Deranged appeared. He had a half-human, half-mechanical body, and he led an army of deadly machines that he invented himself. He was cunning and meticulous, and he had a strong sense of purpose and execution. He was also very cruel when it came to committing crimes. Soon, he became the #1 super criminal on Planet Destroyer, and he was blacklisted by the U-Super Alliance. Fong Bujue and headquarters speed was not slower than the speed of a vehicle. It took them only a minute to find Dr. Deranged. At this time, Dr. Deranged was in front of a computer, looking at the data on the screen. He did not notice that someone was approaching. Fong Bujue slowed down when he was about 100 meters away from him. That's the guy. It was Brother Ju's first time seeing Dr. Deranged, but he had seen the man's 3D image in the database, so he could recognize him. Yes, that's right, headquarters lowered his voice and said, It's basically the same as the information. After he said that, he asked, "So, do you have any plans?" "Yes," Feng Bujue replied. "What is it?" Headquarters asked. "That's right," Brother Ju replied as he moved. In the next second, a purple figure flashed past like a gust of wind, passing through the large pile of equipment around the deranged professor and appearing directly beside him. Immediately after, there were sounds of chi-la, bang, and poo. When headquarters came back to his senses and turned around, the deranged professor was already pinned to the ground by Pokerman. Furthermore, the professor's mechanical left arm had been severed from his body and was lying 5 meters away. "Look." 2 seconds later, Feng Bujue also turned to look at the headquarters. Sometimes the simpler the plan, the more effective it is. "You." At this moment, the deranged professor finally regained his senses and asked, "Who are you people?" "I'm Pokerman." Feng Bujue knew that Toadman was still watching him, so he tried his best to act like a hero. "The one walking towards you is Parkman." He paused for half a second. "Professor Aries deranged, I'm sorry to inform you that you're under arrest." I was wondering who it was. "So it's someone from the U-Super Alliance." The deranged professor heard this and immediately laughed coldly. "I've never heard of the two of you before, but from the combat power that can instantly subdue me, and the courage to set foot on the warm ocean star, at least you, Pokerman, are not to be trifled with. Based on my deduction, you're a galactic-level hero, right?" "So what if I am?" Brother Ju replied. By the time he finished his sentence, HQ had already arrived beside the two of them. It was also at this moment that the deranged professor's lips curled into a smile. "Haha, if you are, then, that's exactly what I wanted." As soon as he finished speaking, something strange happened. The moment the deranged professor finished speaking, a light purple gas suddenly spewed out from his ribs. Feng Bujue and headquarters reacted quickly. When they heard the movement of the gas leaking out, both of them immediately held their breath. "It's useless." However, the deranged professor soon brought them bad news. "This gas can directly penetrate the body through the pores on the skin." He was not bluffing because before he finished speaking, Feng Bujue and headquarters had both fallen to the ground. "How? How?" Headquarters' face was filled with pain as he lay on his side and muttered unwillingly. Feng Bujue's situation was slightly better. Although he had also fallen, he still managed to maintain a sitting-down posture. "It seems we've fallen into your trap." Brother Ju looked at the enemy before him. He resisted the burning sensation inside his body that was enough to drain him of his energy and used his words to test the enemy. "Haha!" The deranged professor laughed. "You seem to have a good brain." Pokerman, as he spoke, he slowly stood up. Obviously, the professor himself was not affected by the gas. "You're right, this is a trap." In just a few steps, the deranged professor had already walked to the side of his mechanical arm that had been torn off. He picked it up from the ground. "A few universe weeks ago, I purposely let the Cosmos Super Alliance's surveillance satellite find me and expose my whereabouts to you. I have to admit you've played your hand quite well." Feng Bujue continued. "You know very well that your actions of running to the warm ocean star will definitely cause the U-Super Alliance to feel uneasy. The Alliance will not just sit by and do nothing. At the very least, they will send someone to confirm the situation. However, due to the uniqueness of the warm ocean star, it is not realistic for them to send a large number of people. In summary, it is not hard to deduce that in the end, there will not be more than 3 heroes who will come to capture you. With this limitation in numbers, the heroes who will come will definitely be stronger. Only then will they be able to ensure that they can subdue you. And this situation is exactly what you want to see." "Humph!" The deranged professor snorted again. "Very accurate analysis, Mr. Pokerman. Unfortunately, it's too late. When he said this sarcastic remark, he had already successfully reattached his broken arm. It's better to be in hindsight, isn't it? Feng Bujue replied with a bitter smile. That's enough, you think you're so smart. I know that you are stalling for time, but the countermeasure that you come up with when you are already in a disadvantageous situation is incomparable to my plan that has considered all the possibilities and prepared all the countermeasures. Then, the deranged professor moved his mechanical arm twice. After he confirmed that the arm's performance was normal, he walked back to the computer. As his hands moved quickly on the console, the equipment around the three of them all disappeared. This is... Headquarters was shocked. A virtual projection? Ha! The deranged professor laughed proudly. I set up these images just to make it seem less out of place for me to stand here. He opened his hands and looked at Brother Ju and Headquarters with a condescending gaze. I will not bring the real equipment down when I'm acting as bait. If it is accidentally broken by you bunch of brutes, that would be awkward. At this point, he raised his left hand and snapped his fingers. As soon as the sound was heard, a dramatic scene took place. The clouds above Lin Sanjia's head slowly parted, revealing a huge spherical gap. Not long after, a curtain of light flashed through the gap, revealing a huge metal object. Is this guy's spaceship? A second later, someone from the headquarters said aloud. But Feng Bujue had confusion on his face. Even if the spaceship has optical camouflage, it should only be able to escape from the optical detection, right? Then, how did it avoid our spaceship's sonic and spatial radar? Ridiculous. The deranged professor laughed. Many of you in the Yumi Alliance seem to think that the hardware developed by Toadman and Tinfoil Man is the best in the universe. Oh? Feng Bujue added. Based on your tone, it sounds like you're the real leader in this field. I'm not sure if I'm the best, but I'm sure that my technology isn't any worse than those two. Surprisingly, although the deranged professor sounded arrogant, his response was actually quite humble. Normally, an evil mad scientist like him would have an arrogant attitude when it came to academic. But now, the deranged professor was able to maintain an objective attitude when it came to evaluating himself and his opponents. Just this point alone was enough to show that he didn't live up to his name. He wasn't deranged at all. Clang. Just as Brother Ju and the deranged professor were talking, the latter's spaceship had already landed. After the sound of the landing frame and the change of air pressure, the spaceship's hatch opened, and then another deranged professor walked out of the spaceship. Headquarters was dumbfounded. He collapsed on the ground and stared at the second professor, not knowing what to say. So, even the people are fake. Feng Bujue soon realized the truth, and he mumbled to himself, this sure is watertight. This level of preparation is only natural. The professor who walked out of the spaceship looked at Brother Ju and said, I've already considered all possibilities and have all countermeasures in place. As he spoke, he raised his finger and pointed at the hymn beside him and said, this double not only contains poison gas, it also has 4 types of radioactive cosmic ores, 16 unique elements, a sonic generator, and when necessary, it can self-destruct. Simply put, no matter what race or type of hero comes today, you've already prepared a way to target their weakness, right? Feng Bujue went along with the professor's words. That's right. The deranged professor replied. By the way, when the professor's real body walked out of the spaceship, the double that had been talking to Brother Ju stopped talking and stood there like a log. But have you considered? Feng Bujue continued. What if the hero doesn't plan to capture you alive? What if the hero doesn't hesitate to use a lethal long-range attack on you when you're within range? If that's the case, I'll just lose a double robot for nothing, the deranged professor replied. Besides, I'm 90% sure you people from the Yushuan Alliance won't do that because you're all heroes. He paused for a moment before continuing. The moment you carry the word hero, you've already placed yourself in a disadvantageous position. At least for me, heroes are the easiest group of people to deal with. The ones that are the hardest to deal with are the villains who have no principles and the lunatics who have lost their minds. Ha! Ha ha ha! Feng Bujua laughed. Alright. I admit defeat. At this point, he had already stalled for 5 to 6 minutes, but he still couldn't control his body. He couldn't get up from the ground. I underestimated you, which led to this situation. So, what do you plan to do next? It's very simple. The deranged professor continued. I need the two of you to act as batteries for my light cone vibrator. As soon as he finished his sentence, the substitute moved again. Without saying a word, he picked up Headquarters and carried him on his shoulder. Then, he turned around and carried him to the spaceship. I say. At this point, Feng Bujua felt like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. He complained, Can't you just go to the hardware store and buy some alkaline batteries? I can't. As the deranged professor replied, he walked up to Brother Ju and carried him on his shoulders. Countless failed experiments have shown me that the only suitable energy source to power this device is bioenergy. A huge amount of bioenergy. Ha! Feng Bujua chuckled bitterly. That's why you set up this trap on this planet. You want to rely on the captured heroes to achieve your goal. You're right. The deranged professor replied, but you still haven't seen the full picture of my plan. Then tell me, I'm listening. Brother Ju, who was carried on the professor's shoulders, was out of ideas. Even if he managed to stall for some time by talking to the professor, this little bit of time was not enough to wait for reinforcements from the U Super Alliance, and it was also not enough for the poison gas to wear off. Just as the deranged professor said, a temporary solution would never win against a comprehensive plan. At least, under the premise that the two of them were on the same level of intelligence, there were very few exceptions to this theory. Therefore, Brother Ju was basically using a tone that said, Let me die with an understanding of what is going on. However, the deranged professor didn't answer Brother Ju on this crucial question. For some reason, the professor suddenly stopped walking. He looked up at the thick clouds in the sky and muttered to himself, It's almost time. Chapter 1260. After Brother Ju and Headquarters were carried onto the spaceship, they were placed inside two transparent cylindrical containers. Then, the deranged professor and his robot avatar put the breathing apparatus inside the containers on Brother Ju and Headquarters. Then, the professor walked to the control panel and used the computer to close the doors of the two containers. Then, he started to pour water into the containers. Of course, the transparent liquid that flowed into the containers through the pipes and looked like water was not actually water. It was an organic liquid that acted as a conductive medium. After extensive research and experiments, the deranged professor discovered that the blood of the tetrapods, every century, the tetrapods' bodies would transform into solid, gaseous, liquid, and pseudolite states. This was an inevitable physiological phenomenon of this race. In the solid state, after being refined, could be turned into an ultimate conductor, which was also one of the necessities to power his device. Don't worry too much. The deranged professor busied himself in front of the screen as he told the two heroes inside the containers, When my vibrator is successfully activated, the power supply will automatically stop. If you're lucky, you might still be alive. He paused. Oh, but after that, you'll have to face the super spin since you've been drained of all your biological energy, so, at this point, the professor tilted his head to look at them with a nonchalant expression. Obviously, he didn't care about other people's lives anymore. In fact, what he was about to do would destroy the entire universe, so 1 or 2 lives were nothing to him. TSK. Looks like we're really going to die here. On the other side, Brother Ju, who was completely submerged in the liquid, thought to himself. I wonder what the resurrection mechanism is like in the free exploration mode. Will I be like Kenny from South Park, waking up at the save point the next day and no one around me remembers that I died? Or will I just rewind? Just as the word rewind entered his mind, a light bulb lit up in Feng Bujue's mind. Wait a minute. The man just said that his device is called Cone of Light Vibrator, right? He immediately thought back to the setting of the superspin, and it dawned on him. What the F***ck? No wonder he said, "It's almost time." At that moment, Feng Bujue finally understood what the deranged professor's goal was. No wonder he said, "I haven't seen the whole picture of his plan." Brother Ju thought to himself, capturing the heroes alive is just one part of his plan. Today, he used the unique timing of the superspin, the geographical advantage of the warm ocean planet, and the cooperation of the two of us idiots. From the word idiot in his mind, it was not hard to see that Brother Ju was quite depressed. This was because he was a person who was used to blaming himself whenever he failed. The situation before his eyes, even though it did not look like the responsibility was on him, and it was mainly due to the opponent's unintentional attack that caught him off guard, Feng Bujue still saw it clearly. He knew that he had been influenced by the superspin, and he had acted too rashly when he made his move. If he had been more careful, there was a chance that he could have avoided this situation. It seems like it's time. About 2 minutes later, the deranged professor looked at the monitor and muttered. Then, he pushed a lever on the control panel. Then, the equipment around the two containers lit up. The cabin was filled with noises. Feng Bujue and Headquarter could clearly feel the power in their bodies rapidly draining away. This draining feeling was different from the burning sensation they felt when they were poisoned. If one had to compare it, the feeling of the draining was like excessive blood loss, while the feeling of the draining was like having one of their organs removed. Ugh! Ugh! The machine had only been activated for 3 seconds when Headquarters' muffled groan came through the respirator. His voice could be heard outside the container. Feng Bujue did not scream because, at that moment, the shock in his heart had reached a stage where he could ignore the physical pain. Hey, this is not so good, is it? When Brother Ju said that in his heart, he was watching his life points, stamina points, and sorcery points drop at the same time, and it was his upper limit that was dropping. Fortunately, the power supply device did not work for too long. After about 20 seconds, the surroundings suddenly quieted down. In fact, this was not the usual silence. It was a very unusual kind of silence. It was as if sound had disappeared from the world. Feng Bujue quickly realized that this was the start of the superspin. What was surprising was that when this silent realm descended, the deranged professor actually opened the hatch and ran out of the spaceship. Almost at the same time, the power supply device stopped working. Just as the deranged professor said, after the power supply stopped, Feng Bujue and Headquarter did not die. Since they had plenty of life points before they were drained, the vibrator had been successfully activated. Not only that, after the power supply process, the influence of the poisonous gas was drained along with their life points. This allowed the two of them to regain their mobility. However, at this moment, Brother Ju and Headquarters' physical fitness had dropped to the level of an ordinary human. Soaked in the liquid, they could not even break the container around them. Besides, even if they did break the container, there was still the professor's robot double standing guard outside. With their current combat power, they would not even be able to withstand a punch or a kick from the robot double. However, no one expected that in just a few seconds, there would be an unexpected turn of events. Under the effect of the superspin, the outer wall of the container that Feng Bujue and Headquarters were in started to disintegrate on its own. Then, the 2 full containers of conductive fluid flowed into the cabin. The 2 heroes took off the respirators on their faces and climbed out of the container. Until the two of them stood still, the robot double that was facing them remained motionless. Even though Headquarter could not figure out what was going on, Brother Jew realized that the robot double's reaction meant that the deranged professor was probably no longer in this space and time. "Follow me." 2 seconds later, Brother Jew patted Boss Hombre on his shoulder and said slowly and clearly to the man. Since sound could not be transmitted normally, Feng Bujue could only communicate with Headquarter using exaggerated mouth movements and hand language. Headquarter was not smart, but with such a short sentence and slow speech, he could still guess. So, with Feng Bujue leading the way, the two of them quickly left the spaceship and returned to the open space outside. At this time, the surface of Warm Ocean Star was a mess. There were plants growing in reverse, objects disintegrating into dust, just like the outer walls of the two containers, and clouds moving at high speed like they were alive. These kinds of scenes that violated the laws of nature were very common in the superspin. The thing that really caught their attention was a door of light, about 10 meters tall and 3 meters wide in the shape of a date seed appeared right in front of the deranged professor's spaceship. As expected, when Feng Bujue saw the door of light, he thought to himself, because they couldn't determine the actual size of the space-time rift, the vibration generator was built outside the spaceship. As he thought this, he began to walk towards the crack. After a few steps, Headquarter patted him on the shoulder from behind. Feng Bujue looked back at Headquarter. Even though the two of them could not speak, Headquarter's eyes showed obvious confusion and anxiety. "Staying here," Feng Bujue still mouthed and gestured, "is still death." He did not say too much. On the one hand, Headquarter would not understand if he said too many words. On the other hand, this sentence was enough. Headquarter understood what Brother Jew meant. He frowned and thought for a few seconds. He gulped and looked back at Brother Jew with a helpless and relieved expression. He nodded. Just like that, the two of them walked into the door of light, one after another. After walking into the space-time rift, the situation was surprisingly peaceful. This was a strange experience for Headquarter, but Brother Jew was very familiar with it, because it was similar to the feeling of teleportation. However, this was also the first time he walked in the white light with his own feet. One step, Feng Bujue adjusted his stride precisely to calculate the distance he walked and memorized it. After walking for exactly 50 meters, Feng Bujue suddenly felt a strong pulling force in front of him. This force was so strong that Brother Jew did not have time to react before he was dragged forward. Headquarter, who was following behind, saw this and wanted to reach out to grab him. Unexpectedly, when Headquarter's hand crossed an invisible boundary, he was also affected by the force. Then, he was dragged along with Headquarter. Bang! When the gravitational force dissipated, a loud noise rang in their ears. This was a brutal attack for the two of them who had been in a silent environment. Feng Bujue and Headquarter both knelt on the ground. They instinctively covered their heads and closed their eyes, enduring the shock and pain from their eardrums to their brains. After a while, when the two of them came back to their senses and opened their eyes again, they found that they were on a flat, rocky ground. Judging from the surrounding scenery and the situation in the sky, they were still on Warm Ocean Star, but the supermagnetic vortex seemed to have stopped. Phew! Headquarter adjusted his breathing and said, "Are you okay?" "I'm not okay," Feng Bujue said honestly, "but I'm not dead yet." Headquarter understood what Brother Jew meant. His situation was similar to Brother Jew's. Although he was not dead, his combat power had been reduced by about 70 to 80%. "I'm in the same situation." He paused and asked, "Pokerman, what happened just now? Did we lose our hearing because of the poisonous gas or because of the machine? What's that glowing door? Why did the supermagnetic vortex stop after we walked in for a while?" "We never lost our hearing." Feng Bujue began to answer without hesitation. When there was no sound, it was because of the supermagnetic vortex. Similarly, the two containers that imprisoned us broke because of the decomposition effect caused by the supermagnetic vortex. He paused for a moment and said, "As for the glowing door, it was undoubtedly created by the light cone vibrator, mentioned by the deranged professor. Simply put, it was a relatively safe and extremely small spacetime rift." Like a time tunnel? Headquarter, who had only half of the story, asked. "You could say that," Feng Bujue replied. "So, we are now on Warm Ocean Star at another point in time?" Headquarter asked again. "I think so," Feng Bujue said. "Wait a minute." Headquarter heard this and his expression changed. "That means the warm ocean star in front of us could experience another supermagnetic vortex at any time." "Ah," Brother Ju replied weakly, "this is indeed a problem. Hey! This is a matter of life and death, okay?" Headquarter was not as calm as he was. "If we don't find a way to escape from this planet, we'll be dead in less than 300 universe weeks. There's no point in panicking." Feng Bujue added, "Our physical abilities have been weakened. Even if we weren't weakened, we aren't the kind of species that can travel through space with our physical bodies. So, without a spaceship, there's nothing we can do." "Aren't we and the deranged professor's spaceship still?" Headquarter wanted to say something. Brother Ju cut him off. "Assuming that we are currently in the past, then these two spaceships obviously have not landed on this planet before. But if we are in the future, then these two spaceships must have been destroyed by who knows how many times they have been through the superspin to the point where they are no longer usable." Unfortunately, Feng Bujue had already come to a conclusion before Headquarter came to a conclusion, a terrible conclusion. "Right." Headquarter thought for a few seconds and said, "What about the deranged professor? He's here as well, right? Why don't I see him?" "Oh, him. He's definitely here." Feng Bujue tilted his head and replied, "But I'm guessing he's already out of the planet's atmosphere." "What?" Headquarter was shocked. "How is that possible? Didn't you just say, no matter if it's the past or the future, there won't be any spaceships here?" "Humph. He doesn't need any spaceships." Feng Bujue said, "Don't forget, the deranged professor is a cyborg. He can transform himself into a form that can survive and travel through space." As he spoke, he gestured around with his eyes. "In fact, to undergo this transmigration, he has to undergo such a transformation. Even if it's him, I'm afraid he can't be sure if there's a planet in his position after transmigration." "Huh!" Headquarter didn't understand this sentence, so he was confused. "Sigh." Brother Ju sighed and explained, "This is a problem that many time travelers overlook. Generally speaking, a time machine will only change the time coordinate, but it won't change its own space coordinate in the universe. In that case, even if we don't consider the fact that the universe itself is always changing, we have to at least consider the revolution and rotation of the planet itself. Otherwise, under the premise that the time axis has changed, but the space axis is still the same, 99% of time travelers will end up in outer space. If they're unlucky, they might end up in the core of the planet." After Headquarters heard this, his eyes widened. In the next few seconds, he first pretended to be enlightened, and then he broke out in a cold sweat. "Then, the two of us are already very lucky to be able to land safely on the surface of the planet. It might not necessarily be luck." Feng Bujue replied, "I think there are two possibilities. 1. We're really lucky. 2. When the deranged professor designed the ritual, he also solved the problem of the space axis." He shrugged. "But, the probability of the former is very low, and the latter, not only is the probability low, but it's also very difficult, and there's no guarantee of success. Of course, no matter what, with the deranged professor's personality and intellect, he would have made ample preparations before he made his move. So, be it outer space or the core of the planet, I'm sure he'll be able to handle it. Then, what should we do? Headquarter asked. Can we only wait for our deaths? Feng Bujue didn't answer this question because before Headquarter finished speaking, the giant shadow of a spaceship appeared in the sky above them. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.